By 27, I knew the exact sound a room made when people wished I hadn't entered it. Voices thinned, cutlery paused halfway to mouths. Someone always found sudden interest in a phone, a window, a stain on the table. Anything except my face. Bowral was good at that sort of thing. It was a pretty town in late winter, all frosted lawns, expensive coats, and shop-front windows polished until they shone. People came here for tulips, wine, and peaceful weekends. I had never been peaceful a day in my life. That morning, frost silvered the grass between the main house and the cottage out back. The cottage had once been used for garden tools before my father decided it was good enough for my mother. Yvonne Hart called it generosity. I called it exile. I woke before my alarm because Mum hated calling for me unless she had no choice. The small bell beside her bed had only chimed once, soft and apologetic, but I was already up. "Mom?" I pushed open her door. Celine Hart sat on the edge of her mattress in her faded dressing gown, both hands folded tightly in her lap. Her hair was wrapped in a scarf, her shoulders rounded as if she were trying to make herself smaller than her shame. The waterproof sheet beneath her had done what it could. Her eyes met mine, and the first thing she whispered was, "I'm sorry." "Nope." I crossed the room and opened the curtains. Pale morning light spilled across the floorboards. "We banned that word before breakfast." "Yvonne, I'm serious." I grabbed the laundry basket from the corner. "Every apology costs $1. At this rate, you'll pay for your own surgery by Christmas." A tiny laugh escaped her before she pressed a hand to her mouth. That laugh was why I got out of bed every morning. That laugh was why I worked until my feet went numb and my back screamed. That laugh was why half the town thought I was a violent little menace, and I let them. I helped her clean up, changed the bedding, and set fresh clothes beside her. None of it disgusted me. It never had. Her body had been damaged bringing me into the world, and everyone had made her pay for it, as if motherhood had been a crime. When I knelt to tie her slippers, her fingers brushed my hair. "You should still be sleeping," she said. "I should be rich, adored, and drinking coffee on a yacht. Life disappoints us all." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Through the thin cottage window, the main house glowed warm and golden. Samantha would be in the kitchen by now, arranging fruit she would not eat, and pretending she had never stolen another woman's place at the table. My father would be drinking black coffee, reading local news, and preparing his respectable face for the world. To outsiders, Yvonne Hart was a generous businessman, a devoted husband, a community man. To me, he was the man who had moved my mother behind his house so he wouldn't have to smell the consequences of his cowardice. After Mum was settled with tea and toast, I carried the laundry basket outside. Cold air bit my cheeks. I crossed the yard toward the side tap, keeping to the stone path because Samantha hated when my boots marked the grass. She appeared on the back veranda before I reached it, wrapped in a cream cardigan, her blonde hair curled neatly over one shoulder. "Yvonne," she called, gentle as poison. "Could you use the outside line today? Paige's decorations are arriving this afternoon." I stared at her. "Good morning to you too, Samantha." Her smile held. "I only mean we have a lot to prepare for tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Paige's gender reveal party. Because apparently announcing a baby's sex required balloon arches, catering, a photographer, and half of Bowral pretending my stepsister had invented pregnancy. Samantha glanced at the basket in my hands. "Some guests can be sensitive," she added. The words were soft. The meaning was not. My grip tightened around the plastic handle. Before I could answer, my father stepped out behind her. "Don't start," Kevin said. I laughed once. "That should be painted over the door of this house." His jaw flexed. "Paige deserves a nice day. And Mum deserves basic respect. Funny how deserving things works around here." Samantha lowered her eyes, playing wounded. My father took one step down from the veranda. He wore a pressed shirt and that expression he saved for me, the one that said I was an inconvenience he regretted creating. "Celine is welcome tomorrow," he said, "if she feels well enough." What he meant was, if she could be invisible. "She'll be there," I said. His mouth thinned. "Then keep her comfortable." "I always do." "No scenes, Yvonne." I looked at him for a long second. "Tell your son to keep his mouth shut, and we'll all have a lovely day." I didn't wait for his reply. By noon, I had cleaned 4 motel rooms in Mittagong, spilled hot coffee on my wrist during the cafe rush, and smiled at enough customers to deserve a national award. My second job was at Moss and Maple, a cafe where tourists ordered almond croissants and locals ordered gossip with skim milk. I was wiping down table 7 when Mrs. Vale leaned toward her friend and murmured, "That poor Kevin. Imagine living with that kind of trouble for so many years." Her friend's gaze slid to me, then away. I set their coffees down hard enough for both cups to rattle. "Anything else?" I asked. Mrs. Vale stiffened. "No, thank you." "Wonderful. If you decide to discuss my family again, I recommend doing it when I'm not holding boiling liquid." The table beside them went quiet. People in Bowral like to pretend I became dangerous without reason. They left out the reasons because reasons made them uncomfortable. They remembered Barry Price's broken nose, though. He had been drunk outside the pub 3 years ago when he said my mother should have been put somewhere useful, like a kennel. I had warned him once. He laughed. So I headbutted him. Clean, fast, effective. Since then, men twice my size lowered their voices when I walked past. Women clutched their pearls and called me unstable. Teenagers dared each other to say things within my hearing, then ran when I turned around. I wasn't proud of the reputation, but I wasn't sorry either. After my shift, I bought groceries, laundry powder, and the medical supplies Mum pretended not to notice in the basket. The total made my chest tighten. I paid anyway. Every dollar had a destination. Rent for the cottage that should have been free, food, transport, Mum's appointments, the surgery fund tucked inside an old biscuit tin beneath my bed. Freedom had a price. I just hadn't earned enough of it yet. When I got home, Mum was sitting by the little heater, sewing a loose button onto her blue dress. I stopped in the doorway. "Absolutely not." She glanced up. "Hello to you, too." "You're sewing the party dress." "It needs fixing." "You hate parties." "I hate being stared at," she corrected softly. "That isn't the same thing." I put the grocery bags on the counter and said nothing. She smoothed the fabric over her knees. The dress was old, carefully kept, the kind of thing she wore when she wanted to remember she was more than an illness. "I want to go," she said. "Mum, I know what they'll say. I know how Samantha will look at me. I know your father will pretend not to notice whether I'm there or not." Her needle paused. "But if I stay here every time someone might be cruel, this cottage becomes my whole life." The words lodged somewhere under my ribs. I wanted to argue. I wanted to lock the door and keep the world away from her. Instead, I crossed the room and sat on the floor beside her chair. "You'll stay next to me," I said. Her smile trembled. "Always so fierce." "Someone has to be." "No," she touched my cheek. "Someone should have let you be soft." I looked away. Softness was a luxury. Like holidays, like savings accounts with commas, like fathers who defended their wives. Mum's hand slid back into her lap. "I worry about you, sweetheart." "Don't." "That has never worked once." I sighed. "You work too much," she said. "You don't go out, you don't date. You don't let anyone close enough to help." "I let the mechanic close last month." "You threatened him with a tire iron." "He overcharged me." A reluctant laugh warmed her face, then faded. "I want to see you loved one day," she whispered. The room went too quiet. I stood quickly and busied myself unpacking the groceries. Love sounds expensive. Yvonne. "No, really. Does it come with a payment plan? Because I'm booked until 2029. She didn't laugh this time. Before she could say anything else, tires crunched over gravel outside. I looked through the window and saw Joshua Hart swaggering toward the cottage with his hands in his jacket pockets. My stepbrother had inherited Kevin's arrogance and Samantha's talent for smiling while drawing blood. I opened the door before he could knock. "What do you want?" Joshua's gaze flicked past me to Mum. "Mum said to remind you tomorrow starts at 2. Try not to be late. Paige wants family photos before the reveal." "How touching." His smile sharpened, and Dad said no drama. Then why did they send you? Mom appeared behind me. Hello, Joshua? He gave her a lazy nod, barely looking at her. Celine. Not Mom. Never Mom. Not even Mrs. Hart. Just Celine, like she was a problem someone had forgotten to solve. My fingers curled around the doorframe. Joshua's eyes returned to me. Oh, and Evie? I hated when he called me that. He knew. If you're bringing a boyfriend, let us know for catering. His grin widened. Actually, never mind. We both know that won't be an issue. Mom went still behind me. Heat climbed up my neck, sharp and familiar. Joshua leaned closer, lowering his voice. Hard to find romance when every man in town knows what comes with you. For one beautiful second, I imagined the sound his nose would make. Mum's hand touched my wrist. Not tonight. Joshua saw it and laughed under his breath. See you tomorrow. He walked away whistling. I stood in the doorway long after he disappeared toward the main house, my jaw aching from how hard I held it shut. Tomorrow, Paige will get her perfect party. Samantha would get her perfect photos. Kevin would get his perfect lie of a family. And Joshua Hart would learn, in front of everyone, exactly why Bowral crossed the street when it saw me coming. By 2 o'clock the next afternoon, the Hart backyard looked like a pastel nightmare. Pink and blue balloons arched over the lawn. Pink and blue cupcakes sat on tiered trays. Pink and blue ribbons curled from the backs of white chairs, fluttering whenever the late winter wind cut across the garden. Even the drinks had labels. Team girl. Team boy. I took one look at the whole thing and muttered, Team headache. Mum squeezed my arm. Behave. I am behaving. That was internal commentary. You said it aloud. Quietly. Her mouth twitched, but the smile didn't last. The moment we stepped through the side gate, people turned. Not everyone, just enough. Mum felt it too. Her fingers tightened around my sleeve, and I hated them for that. I hated every polished guest holding champagne under the white marquee. I hated the soft music playing from hidden speakers. I hated the way conversations dipped when my mother walked into a space she had every right to occupy. She wore the blue dress. I had ironed it twice that morning. She had pinned her hair back and put on the pearl earrings I bought her from an op shop 3 Christmases ago. She looked delicate, nervous, and painfully brave. Samantha appeared before we reached the lawn, smiling as if she had been waiting for us with open arms instead of quiet dread. Celine, she said warmly. Too warmly. You made it. Mum nodded. It's a lovely party. Isn't it? Samantha touched the balloon ribbon beside her. Paige wanted something intimate. I looked past her at the hired photographer, 2 catering staff, a flower wall, and what appeared to be an actual dessert cart. Very intimate, I said. Samantha's eyes flicked to me. Yvonne. Samantha. Her smile sharpened at the edges. There are seats near the patio, if Celine needs to rest, close to the bathroom. Mum's shoulders stiffened. There it was. Nothing cruel enough for anyone else to gasp at. Nothing direct enough to accuse her of. Just one little blade slipped neatly between the ribs. I stepped forward. She'll sit wherever she wants. Of course, Samantha said, all wounded grace. I was only being considerate. That must be new for you. Yvonne? Mum whispered. My father appeared beside the drinks table before Samantha could answer. He looked expensive and irritated, which was his usual party face whenever I was present. Not today, he said under his breath. I smiled. You keep saying that like I'm the entertainment. His gaze dropped to Mum, softened for half a second, then hardened again when it returned to me. This is Paige's day. Congratulations to Paige's uterus. Someone nearby choked on champagne. Mum pinched my arm. Hard. I cleared my throat. Sorry. Congratulations to Paige. Kevin's jaw worked, but guests were watching, so he swallowed whatever he wanted to say. Respectable men never showed their teeth in public. They waited until the doors were closed. Paige drifted toward us in a pale pink dress that hugged her rounded stomach. She looked beautiful, of course. Paige always looked as if she had stepped out of someone else's better life. Glossy hair, perfect nails, a smile trained to land well in photographs. "Yvonne," she said, kissing the air beside my cheek. "You came." I was summoned. Her smile flickered. "Aunt Celine, you look nice." Mum's face warmed with surprised pleasure. "Thank you, sweetheart." For that alone, I hated Paige a little less for nearly 4 seconds, and her gaze swept over my black trousers, boots, and deep green jumper. "You didn't want to dress up?" "I did. This is my formal threat." Paige blinked. Behind her, Joshua laughed. He stood near the bar with 2 of his mates, holding a beer despite the fact it was barely afternoon. His nose was straight today. That felt temporary. "Careful," he called. "She bites." "No," I said. "I'm up to date on my vaccinations." A few people snickered before pretending they hadn't. Joshua's grin faltered, then returned twice as smug. Mum tugged me toward the edge of the marquee. "Please," she murmured. "Let's just get through this." So I tried. For her, I tried. I fetched her tea. I found a chair that wasn't hidden beside the bathroom. I placed myself beside her like a badly dressed guard dog and smiled at anyone who came too close with pity in their eyes. The party moved around us in bursts of laughter and perfume. People guessed the baby's sex by dropping tokens into glass jars. Paige posed in front of the flower wall with one hand under her belly. Samantha glided between guests, accepting compliments as if she had personally invented family happiness. Kevin shook hands and played proud father. No one looking at him would have guessed his first wife sat 15 meters away with her hands folded in her lap, trying not to take up too much space. I was reaching for a cucumber sandwich when I saw him. At first, he was only a tall figure near the back fence, half turned away from the crowd. Dark hair, black coat. Broad shoulders relaxed in a way that didn't match the room at all. Everyone else seemed eager to be seen. He looked as if being noticed was optional. He stood beside an older man I didn't recognize, listening more than speaking. When he smiled, it was brief, almost private. Not polished, not performative. His gaze moved across the party with calm attention, taking in details other people missed. Then his eyes found mine. I forgot about the sandwich. The distance between us was easily 20 meters, with balloons, guests, and bad decisions in the way. Still, something in my chest went oddly still. His eyes were a striking hazel, sharp even from across the lawn, and he held my gaze like he had no intention of looking away first. Most men looked at me in one of 2 ways, cautious or curious. This man looked amused, as if he had already heard every warning about me, and was waiting to see which ones were true. My fingers tightened around the plate. His mouth curved slightly. Not a smile, a challenge. "Who is that?" I asked before I could stop myself. Mum followed my gaze. The moment she saw him, something strange passed over her face. Recognition, maybe. Or shock. It vanished so quickly I wondered if I had imagined it. "I'm not sure," she said softly. I looked back at the stranger. He was still watching me. Then Joshua stepped into my line of sight and ruined the only pleasant thing that had happened all day. "There she is," he said. "Our family bodyguard." "Move." He looked delighted. "Rude." "I'm busy ignoring you." "With what? Scaring sandwiches?" His mates laughed behind him. Mum's fingers clenched around her teacup. Joshua noticed. Of course he noticed. Cruel people always knew where to press. He leaned sideways, peering at her. "Comfortable there, Celine? Need anything? A towel, maybe?" The world narrowed. The sound faded, as if the whole backyard had been plunged underwater. Mum's cup rattled against its saucer. Across the lawn, Paige lowered her mocktail. Samantha went still. My father's face changed, not with outrage, but with warning. Warning me, not him. I set the plate down slowly. "Apologize," I said. Joshua laughed. "For what?" I was being considerate. Samantha's favorite word. My heartbeat thudded once, twice. Mum whispered, "Yvonne, don't." But Joshua smiled wider, drunk on the attention. on the safety he thought the crowd gave him. "Come on," he said loudly. "Everyone knows why she lives out back. We're all just too polite to—" I moved before he finished. There were gasps. A chair scraped. My forehead connected with his nose in one clean, satisfying crack. Joshua stumbled backward, beer spilling down his shirt, both hands flying to his face. Blood streamed between his fingers almost instantly. For half a second, no one moved. Then everyone moved at once. "Oh my God! Joshua? Yvonne?" Mom stood so fast her chair nearly tipped. "Sweetheart?" "I warned him," I said, breathing hard. Joshua bent over, swearing into his palms. His friends hovered uselessly, suddenly less amused. Paige burst into tears. Whether from shock, hormones, or the fear that blood had ruined her color scheme, I couldn't tell. Kevin grabbed my arm and yanked me away from Joshua. "Have you lost your mind?" I wrenched free. "Don't touch me." "You assaulted your brother in front of guests." "He insulted my mother in front of guests." "That does not excuse violence." "No, apparently it only excuses abandonment." His face went white with rage. The photographer had stopped pretending not to take photos. Half the guests had their phones angled badly at their chests, recording like cowards. Joshua straightened, blood smeared over his mouth and chin. His eyes were wet with pain and fury. "You're insane," he spat. "This is why no man wants you. Look at you. You're 27, still living behind Dad's house, playing nurse to a woman who—" "Finish that sentence," I said softly. He stopped. Not because he had sense, because the stranger had moved. I hadn't noticed him crossing the lawn, but suddenly he was closer, standing just beyond the edge of the gathering crowd. He didn't shove through. He didn't demand attention. People simply shifted out of his way. His presence changed the air. Joshua saw him too, but pride made him stupid. He pointed at me, blood dripping onto his shirt. "Go on then, Evie. Since you're such a catch. Where's your boyfriend?" Where's the poor bastard willing to claim all this?" Something hot and reckless surged through me. Maybe it was humiliation. Maybe rage. Maybe the way Mum stood behind me, shaking as if every cruel word had landed on her body instead of mine. I turned. My eyes locked with the stranger's. He watched me with that same unreadable calm, but there was something else now. A question. A warning. Almost amusement. "Do not." That look seemed to say. Unfortunately, I had never responded well to warnings. "Him," I said. The entire backyard went silent. My arm lifted, finger pointing straight at the most beautiful man I had ever seen. "He's my boyfriend." For one terrible second, nobody breathed. Then Samantha made a small, choking sound. Paige stopped crying. Kevin stared at me as if I had finally set the house on fire. Joshua lowered his bloody hands. "What?" I swallowed. The stranger's gaze flicked from my pointed finger to my face. His expression gave away nothing. No panic, no confusion, no reasonable desire to remove himself from the disaster I had just dragged him into. He walked toward me, slowly. Every step seemed to draw more silence from the crowd. Up close, he was worse. Not handsome in a clean, pretty way, handsome like weather over dark water. His jaw was shadowed, his mouth firm, his eyes warmer and more dangerous than they had looked from across the lawn. He smelled faintly of cedar, cold air, and something I couldn't name. He stopped beside me, close enough that his sleeve brushed mine. The contact sent an absurd spark up my arm. I hated my body for noticing. He looked down at me. "You could have warned me, love." His voice was low, smooth, and touched with laughter. "Love." My brain emptied. Joshua barked, "You know her?" The stranger turned his head. The warmth vanished from his face so quickly, I almost stepped back. "Yes," he said. One word. No explanation. No apology. His hand settled lightly at the small of my back. Not possessive, not forceful, just steady. as if he knew I was one breath away from either fainting or committing a second felony. I glanced up at him, and he lowered his head slightly, bringing his mouth near my ear. "Try not to look terrified of your own boyfriend," he murmured. I recovered enough to glare. "Try not to enjoy this." His mouth curved. "Too late." A laugh tried to climb out of my throat at the worst possible moment. I strangled it. Kevin stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "And who exactly are you?" The stranger extended his free hand with effortless composure. "Edgar Collins." The name meant something. I saw it ripple through the adults before I understood it. Samantha's posture straightened. Kevin's expression shifted from anger to calculation. Guests whispered. Even Joshua looked uncertain through the blood. Collins. I knew the name vaguely. Money. Sydney. Business pages at the cafe. The kind of family people spoke about in careful voices. Edgar's hand remained at my back, warm through my jumper. Kevin accepted the handshake. I wasn't aware Yvonne was seeing anyone. "No," Edgar said, glancing at me. "She enjoys keeping people uncomfortable." The corner of my mouth twitched before I could stop it. Joshua muttered, "Bullshit." Edgar looked at him. That was all. Just looked. Joshua shut his mouth. It was the most romantic thing I had ever witnessed. Mum stepped closer, her face pale with worry and confusion. "Yvonne?" I turned to her, and guilt hit so hard I nearly swayed. I could lie to everyone in that backyard without blinking, but not to her. Not easily. Edgar seemed to feel the change in me. His hand shifted, fingers spreading slightly against my back, grounding me. I forced a smile. Surprise. Mum stared at me, then at Edgar. Something passed between them again, quick, hidden, impossible to read. Edgar's expression softened. "Mrs. Hart," he said, with a respect no one in that house had given her all day. "It's a pleasure to meet you properly." Properly. The word caught me strangely. Mum's lips parted, but before he could answer, Paige's husband, whose name I always forgot because he had the personality of damp cardboard, called weakly from near the balloon arch. "Should we still do the reveal?" No one answered. Joshua groaned, blood dripping onto Samantha's perfect lawn. Samantha snapped for someone to get tissues. Kevin kept looking between me and Edgar like he was rearranging numbers in his head. And I stood there with a billionaire stranger's hand on my back, my forehead throbbing, my mother trembling beside me, and every guest in Bowral silently rewriting what they thought they knew about me. Edgar leaned down again, his breath brushing my ear. "I assume," he murmured, "there is a story behind this." I looked up at him. His eyes held mine, bright with restrained amusement and something steadier beneath it. "Oh, there's a story," I whispered. "Good." Why is that good? Because I expect it will be entertaining. I should have stepped away. I should have apologized, explained, and let the ground swallow me whole. Instead, I stayed exactly where I was, because for the first time all afternoon, Joshua Hart looked small, my father looked uncertain, and my mother looked like someone had remembered she deserved respect. Edgar's thumb brushed once against my back, a barely there touch, a quiet warning, or a promise. I couldn't tell which. Then he smiled at the crowd like none of this was unusual and said, "Now, should someone help your brother with his nose? Or is bleeding part of the celebration?" That was when I knew two things with absolute certainty. One, Edgar Collins was dangerous, and two, I had just invented a boyfriend who was far better at lying than I was. There were better ways to leave a gender reveal than with my forehead throbbing, my stepbrother bleeding into a wad of napkins, and a billionaire stranger's hand resting at my back, like he had every right to be there. Unfortunately, I had never been known for choosing the better way. 20 minutes after Joshua's nose met my skull, Paige's husband finally fired the confetti cannon. Pink paper exploded over the lawn. "It's a girl," he announced weakly. The applause came late and uncertain. A A few guests cheered because manners were stronger than shock, but most were still glancing between Joshua's blood-stained shirt and Edgar Collins standing beside me. Paige cried again. This time, at least, it might have been for the baby. Samantha fluttered around her with tissues and soft words, though her eyes kept cutting toward me like little knives. My father stood near the drinks table, jaw tight, pretending he wasn't calculating how much damage I had done to the family name. I hoped it was expensive. Edgar leaned slightly closer. Is every family gathering this lively? No, I said. Sometimes there's cake first. His mouth twitched. That tiny, almost smile should not have affected me. Nothing about him should have affected me. He was a stranger I had dragged into a lie because my pride had outweighed my common sense. Yet every time his sleeve brushed mine, my thoughts tripped over themselves. Joshua glared from a chair near the patio, an ice pack pressed to his nose. "You're enjoying this," I muttered. "I'm observing." That sounds like something people say when they're enjoying themselves quietly. I've never seen a man bleed at a baby celebration before. Edgar glanced down at me. It has educational value. I wanted to laugh. I refused on principle. Paige approached us after the reveal, one hand resting over her stomach, the other clutching a pink napkin. Her mascara had survived in a way that felt unfair. "Edgar Collins," she said, voice breathy with disbelief. "I didn't realize you knew Yvonne." "Neither did I, Paige." Edgar's expression remained calm. "Not many people do." The answer gave nothing away, and somehow sounded intimate enough to make Paige blink. Her gaze moved over him with undisguised interest before sliding to me, confused, faintly irritated. I knew that look. Paige had spent her life being the kind of woman men noticed first. Seeing Edgar stand close to me instead of drifting toward her like everyone else must have felt like the natural order had been insulted. "How long have you two been—" She let the sentence hang. I opened my mouth. Nothing useful came out. Edgar saved me with insulting ease. "Long enough." I stared at him. He looked back, perfectly composed. Long enough? That was his grand contribution to our fake romantic history? Paige's smile tightened. "Wow, how lovely." "Isn't it?" I said. Her eyes narrowed just enough for me to enjoy it. My father appeared then, wearing his public smile, the one that never reached his eyes. "Mr. Collins," he said, "I apologize for the unpleasantness. We weren't expecting any of this." Edgar looked at Joshua, then back to Kevin. "No one ever expects a headbutt." My lips pressed together. Kevin's smile strained. "Perhaps you'd like to stay for a drink. I'm sure Yvonne would." "Yvonne looks ready to leave," Edgar said. The speed with which he cut through my father's sentence made something warm and unfamiliar settle in my chest. Kevin did not like being interrupted, especially not politely. His eyes flicked to me. "Yvonne can speak for herself." "She can," Edgar agreed. Loudly, I imagine. I laughed then. Just once. My father's face hardened. Across the lawn, Mum stood beside her chair with her shawl drawn close around her shoulders. She had been quiet since Joshua's insult, quiet in the way that frightened me more than tears. I stepped away from Edgar immediately. "Mum," I said softly. Her gaze moved from me to Edgar and back again. There were questions in her eyes, but no accusations, only worry. "Are you all right?" she asked. "I should be asking you that." "I'm fine." She wasn't. I hated that she lied to make me feel better. Edgar came to stand beside me, leaving a respectful distance between himself and my mother. "Mrs. Hart," he said, his voice gentler than before. "I'm sorry your afternoon was spoiled." Mum looked startled by the apology, as if kindness from a stranger required translation. "It wasn't your fault," she said. "No," he replied. "It wasn't Yvonne's either." The words landed quietly, but they landed deep. Mum's fingers tightened around her shawl. For a second, I couldn't look at either of them. Because if I did, I might have cried, and I had already caused enough entertainment for one afternoon. I took Mum back to the cottage before anyone could say something else worth breaking a nose over. Edgar didn't follow us, but I felt his attention between my shoulder blades the whole way across the frosted grass. Inside, the cottage smelled of lavender soap and the soup Mum had left warming on the stove. The quiet should have soothed me. Instead, it made every lie louder. Mum sat in her armchair without removing her shawl. I hovered near the tiny kitchen. "Tea?" "Yvonne." I froze. She rarely used that tone with me. Soft but steady. The voice of a woman who had survived more than anyone gave her credit for. I turned. Her eyes searched my face. "Is he truly your boyfriend?" There it was. The question I deserved. I could have lied. I had lied to a whole backyard full of people without sweating. But Mum's hope was worse than suspicion. It sat there in her eyes, fragile and terrified of being foolish. "It's new," I said. "Coward." Mum studied me for a long moment. Then she looked down at her hands. "You don't have to invent happiness for my sake." The words hurt more than Joshua's insult. "I didn't." "Yes, you did." Her smile trembled. "Maybe not all of it. Maybe he is kind. Maybe he helped because he wanted to. But I know you, sweetheart." I gripped the edge of the counter. She knew me too well. That had always been the problem. "I just wanted them to stop looking at you like that," I said. "I know. And I wanted Joshua to shut up." That part was clear. A laugh escaped me, sharp and wet around the edges. Mum reached for my hand when I came close. Her skin felt cool. "When he stood beside you," she said, "for a moment I thought maybe someone had finally chosen to stand there." I swallowed hard. The surgery fund could not buy that look back. No amount of overtime could. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She squeezed my fingers. "Don't be. Just don't lose yourself trying to prove something to people who have already decided not to see you." I nodded because speaking felt dangerous. But as I helped her change out of her dress and settled her with tea, one thought kept circling. For one moment she had believed I wasn't alone, and I wanted to give her that moment again, even if I had to borrow it. Edgar's car was still parked near the side road when I stepped outside 15 minutes later. Black, sleek, and completely out of place beside Kevin's gravel drive. He stood beside it with his phone in one hand, coat collar turned against the cold. He looked up before I called his name. Of course he did. "Mr. Collins," I said. His brow lifted. "After declaring me your boyfriend in public, you're going with Mr. Collins? Would you prefer darling?" "That depends. Can you say it without sounding like you're threatening me?" "No." "Then Edgar will do." I stopped a few feet away, suddenly aware of the wind, my pulse, and the fact that we were alone. "I'm sorry," I said. His teasing faded. "For what?" "For dragging you into that circus. For pointing at you like you were a fire exit. For making people think we're—" I gestured between us. "Whatever we are." "Fake lovers?" My face warmed. "Don't say lovers." "Fake sweethearts?" "Worse. Fake, emotionally entangled acquaintances?" Despite myself, I smiled. "That one sounds accurate." Edgar slipped his phone into his pocket. "Apology accepted." "You don't even know what I'm apologizing for properly." "I know enough." "No, you don't." The words came out sharper than I intended. I looked past him toward the dark line of trees beyond the property. My breath fogged in front of me. "My mother was injured giving birth to me," I said. "A fistula. She's lived with it my whole life. The leaking, the infections, the shame people forced on her." I rubbed my hands together, more from nerves than cold. "My father moved her into that cottage after he remarried. Everyone pretends it was kinder than sending her away completely." Edgar said nothing. That helped. Most people rush to fill pain with useless words. "She thinks she ruined my life," I continued, "because I work too much, because I don't date, because I fight every idiot who decides her illness is a punchline." "Is that why you hit him?" Edgar asked quietly. "I didn't hit him." His eyes dropped briefly to my forehead. I sighed. "Fine, Is that why I weaponized my skull? Yes. There it was again, that slight curve at the edge of his mouth. Then he looked toward the cottage window, where warm light spilled through thin curtains. What does she need? The question was simple. Too simple. I stiffened. I'm not asking you for money. I didn't say you were, but you're rich. So I've been told. And rich people hear a sad story and start trying to purchase solutions. His gaze returned to mine. Do they? Yes. Then it's fortunate I'm not offering. The quiet certainty in his voice unsettled me more than arrogance would have. I folded my arms. I need a favor. From your fake, emotionally entangled acquaintance? Don't make me regret apologizing. Too late? Edgar. He smiled then, properly, and it did something irresponsible to the air between us. I forced myself to continue. Come to dinner. His brows rose. With my mother, I added quickly. At the cottage, just once. She doesn't need a performance, not flowers and grand gestures and whatever men like you think normal people do. What do men like me do? Arrive with a private violinist and a bottle of wine older than my father's second marriage. A tempting plan, but go on. I ignored him. Just sit with us. Eat her cooking. Let her see someone beside me who isn't ashamed to be there. My voice lowered despite my best effort. Let her sleep one night thinking I have someone. Edgar's expression changed. Not pity. If it had been pity, I would have walked away. This was something heavier. Anger maybe, but not at me. One dinner, I said. After that, I'll tell her we decided to remain friends, or that you moved overseas, or that I was too charming, and you needed time to recover. That last one may be believable. I rolled my eyes, but my chest loosened. He studied me for a moment. When? I blinked. You're saying yes? You asked. People say no when asked things. I'm aware. And yet, he said, I'd like to meet the woman who raised someone brave enough to headbutt cruelty in broad daylight. I looked away because that was dangerously close to kindness. She raised someone with poor impulse control. That too. The wind pushed a curl across my face. Before I could move it, Edgar reached out, then paused just short of touching me. The restraint was worse than the touch would have been. May I? He asked. My throat went dry. I nodded once. He brushed the curl aside with careful fingers, barely grazing my temple. The contact was light, but my whole body noticed. His hand lowered slowly, as if he felt it too, and was choosing not to mention it. Smart man. Tomorrow evening? He asked. 6. I'll be there. I should have thanked him and left. Instead, I stood there like an idiot, watching the shadows shift across his face. Then he said, I'll need a favor in return. Of course. There it was. My senses sharpened. What kind of favor? My family is in Sydney. That sounds expensive already. They want to meet the woman I'm apparently seeing. I stared at him. Absolutely not. You haven't heard the details. I heard family, Sydney, and meet. That's 3 warnings in one sentence. They're having dinner next weekend. No. Yvonne. I hated how my name sounded in his mouth. Calm, familiar, like he had been saying it for longer than a day. He stepped closer, not enough to crowd me, but enough that I caught that cedar and cold air scent again. You need me to be convincing for your mother, he said. I need you to be convincing for mine. Why? A flicker of something crossed his face. Amusement, yes, but guarded. My mother has decided my personal life requires intervention. Smart woman. Cruel from someone asking me to lie over soup. I'm asking for one evening. So am I. I narrowed my eyes. Your family won't be weird, will they? His smile returned, slow and suspicious. Define weird. Oh, I don't like that answer. You'll survive them. That's also not comforting. They may ask questions. I may answer badly. I'm counting on it. I should have refused. I truly intended to. But then I looked back at the cottage, at the small square of light where my mother sat alone, because my father had decided her suffering was inconvenient. One dinner for her, one dinner for him. A trade. A terrible, reckless, possibly catastrophic trade. Fine, I said, but there are rules. I'm listening. No pity, no money, no surprise violinists. Agreed. No touching, unless necessary. His gaze dipped briefly to the space between us. Necessary may become subjective. My pulse betrayed me. Try not to sound pleased about that. I'll try. You'll fail. Probably. I hated that I smiled. Edgar opened his car door but didn't get in. 6 o'clock tomorrow, then. Don't be late. I'm never late. Rich people always say things like that. And women who headbutt men always make assumptions? Only accurate ones. He laughed under his breath, and the sound followed me all the way back to the cottage. I told myself it was just a bargain. One dinner for my mother. One dinner for his family. Nothing more. But at exactly 6 o'clock the next evening, when a knock sounded at the cottage door, and Mum looked up with trembling hope in her eyes, I realized bargains were dangerous things, especially when they arrived wearing a black coat and carrying lavender. By 5 o'clock, Mum had cleaned the cottage so thoroughly, I was worried the walls might start apologizing. She had dusted the same shelf 3 times, polished the tiny dining table until its scratches shone, and rearranged the 2 mismatched candles in the center at least 6 different ways. The cottage smelled of rosemary, slow-cooked beef, lavender soap, and the faint sharpness of the disinfectant she used when she was anxious. "Mum," I said from the kitchen doorway, "if you wipe that bench again, it's going to file a complaint." She looked up, startled, cloth still in hand. "Does it look all right?" "It looks like we're expecting the king." "Oh, don't be ridiculous." She glanced toward the front window for the 10th time in 5 minutes. "He's only a guest. He's my fake boyfriend." "Yvonne." "What?" "It's technically true." Her cheeks warmed, but she turned away before I could see whether she was smiling. She wore her best navy dress, the one she saved for doctor's appointments she wanted to feel brave for, and the pearl earrings from the op shop. Her hair was pinned neatly at the back of her head. She had even put on lipstick. The sight of it made my chest ache. All day she had moved between excitement and fear, opening the windows even though the cold crept in, checking the bathroom twice, asking me if the cottage smelled strange. Every time, I told her no. Every time, I wanted to burn the whole world down for making her ask. At exactly 6, a knock sounded at the door. Mum froze. I pointed at her. "Breathe." "I am breathing." "You look like you're preparing for trial." "I haven't had a gentleman come to dinner in years." "That makes 2 of us." She gave me a look. I opened the door before either of us could panic further. Edgar Collins stood on the step in a black coat, his dark hair touched by the damp evening air. One hand held a small bundle of lavender tied with twine. Not roses. Not something expensive and dramatic. Lavender. My throat tightened despite my best efforts. "You brought flowers," I said. "I was warned against violinists." "Smart man." His gaze moved over my face, pausing briefly at the faint bruise near my hairline. "How's the weapon?" "My forehead remains undefeated." That must be comforting for Bowrell. I stepped aside, ignoring the ridiculous warmth his voice sent through me. "Come in before Mum vibrates through the floorboards." He entered carefully, ducking a little beneath the low frame. The cottage seemed smaller with him inside. Not because he looked down on it, he didn't. He simply filled space differently, calmly, as if rooms adjusted themselves around him. Mum stood near the table with her hands clasped. The moment Edgar saw her, something changed. It was subtle. A stillness in his shoulders. A quiet recognition in his eyes. Mum felt it too. Her lips parted slightly before she caught herself. "Mrs. Hart," he said, offering the lavender. "Thank you for having me." She accepted the flowers with both hands. "Mr. Collins, you can call me Edgar, and you may call me Celine." Her smile trembled. "It's lovely to see you." Again. She didn't say the word. She didn't have to. I looked between them. "Have you two met?" Mum busied herself touching the lavender stems. Edgar glanced at her once, then back at me. "Briefly," he said. "Where?" "In town," Mum answered quickly. Too quickly. "Months ago. It was nothing." Edgar's expression softened. It wasn't nothing. A silence settled between them, gentle and private. I narrowed my eyes. "I'm standing right here." "Yes," Edgar said, very observant. "I don't like secrets. Then it's unfortunate you started a fake relationship." Mom laughed. Actually laughed. "And because of that, I let it go. For now." Dinner was served on Mum's old blue plates, the ones with chipped edges she turned toward herself so guests wouldn't notice. Edgar noticed. I knew he noticed because he noticed everything. But he didn't look at the chips, didn't look around the cottage with pity, didn't hesitate before sitting in the wobbly chair I had warned him about. He simply adjusted his long legs under the table and said, "This smells incredible." Mum looked as if he'd handed her the moon. "It's only stew." "There is no such thing as only stew in winter." I sat across from him and tried not to stare. He ate like a man who understood the difference between manners and performance. He didn't take tiny, polite bites. He tasted properly, praised honestly, asked what herbs she used, and listened when she answered. Mum unfolded in front of him. Slowly, carefully. Like a flower unsure whether spring could be trusted. "She used to hate carrots," Mum said, nodding toward me. "When she was little, she'd hide them in her socks." Edgar's eyes came to me at once, bright with amusement. "Resourceful?" "I was 6. You wasted good storage space. I had limited options." "She also once tried to fight a rooster," Mum added. I put down my spoon. "That rooster started it." Edgar leaned back slightly. "I'm beginning to see a pattern." "It chased Mum," I said. "It was a rooster, sweetheart." "It had hostile intent." Mum laughed again, softer this time, one hand pressed to her chest. Edgar watched her with an expression I couldn't quite name. Something in him had gentled. The polished ease was still there, but beneath it sat a quiet ache, as if he understood he was being allowed into a room most people had only ever made smaller. "So," Mum said after clearing her throat, "how did you and my daughter meet?" I choked on my water. Edgar, the traitor, looked completely entertained. "At a party," he said. "An event," I corrected. "A dramatic event." "A family event." Where she pointed at me and changed my life. I kicked him under the table. His gaze dropped briefly, then returned to mine. Violent even during dinner. Mum looked between us, eyes shining with something dangerously close to hope. I softened despite myself. "It's new, Mum." "I know," she smiled down at her plate. "New things can still be good." The room went quiet after that. Not awkward, just full. After dinner, Mum insisted on serving apple crumble, even though I knew she had already been on her feet too long. When she pushed herself up from the table, Edgar stood at the same time. "Please," he said, "let me." Mum blinked. "Oh no, you're a guest." "And guests are useful where I come from." "Are they?" I asked. He picked up 2 plates. "Some of us." His shoulder brushed mine as he passed through the narrow kitchen doorway. The touch was brief, accidental, and completely unreasonable. Heat moved up my arm. I reached for the bowls at the same moment he did. Our fingers met. Neither of us moved at first. His hand was warm, steady. The contrast against the cold ceramic making me far too aware of the small space between us. The kitchen light caught in his hazel eyes, turning them almost gold at the edges. "You keep doing that," I whispered. "What?" Standing too close. His voice lowered. "You keep noticing." My breath caught. From the sitting room, Mum called, "I'm old, not deaf." I snatched the bowls from Edgar's hand. He laughed under his breath, and I hated how much I liked the sound. While Mum ate her crumble in the armchair, Edgar washed dishes. A billionaire stood in my mother's tiny kitchen, sleeves rolled to his forearms, hands in soapy water, listening to her tell him about the time I stole coins from Kevin's jacket to buy her a birthday cupcake. "I paid him back," I said quickly. "With interest," Mum added. "She left a note." Edgar looked over his shoulder. "What did it say?" I sighed. "Your jacket contributed to a worthy cause." His smile came slowly. "I wish I'd known you at 12. "No, you don't. I was terrifying. I believe I would have survived." Something in the way he said it made me look away. Later, when I took the rubbish outside, the cold hit my face hard enough to steady me. I stood by the bin for longer than necessary, trying to gather myself. Through the slightly open kitchen window, Mum's voice drifted out. "You didn't tell her." Edgar answered quietly. "It wasn't mine to tell. She would have been upset." "Yes," he said. "I assumed that was why you kept it from her." My fingers tightened around the rubbish bag. Mum sighed. "Thank you. For that day." A pause. Then Edgar said, "You thanked me enough by getting home safely." I stepped back before they could see me listening. When I returned inside, both of them were perfectly normal. Too normal. I looked at Mum, then at Edgar. "What day?" Mum folded her napkin with great care. "Just an old kindness." "From him?" "There's no need to make a fuss." "I enjoy fuss." Edgar dried his hands on a towel, watching me. "I'm learning that." I wanted to press. I wanted every detail. But Mum's eyes asked me not to. So I swallowed the questions and let the secret sit between us, small and glowing. When Edgar finally stood to leave, Mum walked him to the door. She looked tired now, but happy in a way I hadn't seen for years. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for dinner." "You'll come again?" The question slipped out before she could hide it. Edgar didn't hesitate. "If Yvonne allows it," I crossed my arms. "I'll check my schedule." "She means yes," Mum said. "I mean maybe." Edgar's eyes met mine. "I'll take maybe." Outside the night was sharp and quiet. I walked him to his car because Mum was watching through the curtain, and subtlety had abandoned us hours ago. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then Edgar turned to me. "Your mother is remarkable." The words hit somewhere soft. "Yes," I said. "She is." "I understand you better now." I looked up. "That sounds dangerous." "It is." The space between us felt too thin. His gaze dropped for half a second to my mouth, then returned to my eyes with infuriating control. "You owe me Sydney," he said, and just like that, the spell cracked. "I was hoping you'd forgotten." "I never forget bargains." "Your family dinner? Right." "Saturday morning. I'll drive." I groaned. "Are they going to be horrible?" "My father is quiet. My mother is elegant. My cousin Allaire talks too much. Becky will probably adopt you. Nick will stare like he expects you to commit treason." That was meant to reassure me? No. "At least you're honest." His smile faded slightly. "They can be intense, Yvonne." People keep warning me about intense families like I didn't grow up with the Harts. This is different. The way he said it sent a strange chill through me. Different how? Before I could ask, the cottage curtain shifted. Mum was still watching, probably smiling into the fabric. I exhaled. "Fine. Saturday." Edgar opened his car door, then paused. "And Yvonne?" "What?" "Don't wear anything you can't run in." I stared at him. "Excuse me?" But he only smiled, slid into the car, and drove away into the winter dark, leaving me on the gravel with my heart beating too fast, and the uncomfortable feeling that Sydney was not just a return favor, it was a warning. Edgar arrived at 9 sharp on Saturday morning, which annoyed me because I had been ready to judge him for being late. Mum stood at the cottage window pretending not to watch the driveway. She had been pretending for 20 minutes. Her tea had gone cold in her hands, and my overnight bag sat by the door, packed with more care than anything I owned deserved. "You don't have to look so pleased to get rid of me," I said. She smiled without turning around. "I'm not pleased. I'm hopeful." "That's worse. You need a weekend away." "I need money, sleep, and for Joshua's nose to make a full recovery in an unattractive shape." "Yvonne." "What?" "I'm being honest." She finally looked at me. "Please try not to threaten anyone in his family. I don't threaten people unless provoked." "That is not as reassuring as you think." A knock sounded before I could defend myself. Mum's face brightened in a way that made my chest tighten. I opened the door and found Edgar standing on the step in a charcoal coat, the winter wind stirring his dark hair. He looked freshly showered, unfairly awake, and entirely too comfortable being the reason my mother was smiling. His gaze dropped to my boots. "Good," he said. I narrowed my eyes. "Are we running from something today?" "Not if things go well." "That is a terrible answer." His mouth curved. "Morning, Yvonne." Behind me, Mum made a soft, delighted sound, like she approved of the way he said my name. "Traitor." Edgar greeted her with the same quiet respect he had shown at dinner, and somehow that made me more nervous than if he had walked in acting rich and insufferable. He took my bag before I could stop him. "I can carry that." "I know." "Then why are you carrying it?" "Because I got to it first." "That isn't a system." "It worked." Mum followed us to the door. "Drive safely." "I will," Edgar said. "And look after yourself too," she added. His expression softened. "I'll bring her back in one piece." "She bites," Mum warned gently. "I've heard rumors." "I'm standing right here," I said. "Very alert of you," Edgar replied. I should not have smiled. I did anyway. The drive out of Bowral was cold and gray, the paddock silvered with frost, bare branches scraping at the morning sky. For the first 20 minutes I tried to sit like a normal passenger instead of a woman being transported into the unknown by her fake boyfriend with suspiciously good cheekbones. It didn't work. Edgar glanced over. "You're quiet." "I'm conserving energy in case I need to flee." "You really took the running comment seriously. You told a woman who headbutts people to wear practical shoes. That sounded like strategy." "It was advice." "For what?" "My family can be intense." "So you've said." "They have serious faces." "I survived my father's dinner table. Serious faces don't scare me." "They ask difficult questions." "I lie badly when hungry, so feed me first." His fingers shifted on the steering wheel. Noted. The motorway opened ahead of us, Sydney pulling closer with every kilometer. I watched the landscape change from rolling country to crowded suburbs, from quiet roads to lanes of impatient traffic. The city rose in pieces, glass towers, bridges, glimpses of water flashing between buildings. I had been to Sydney before, but mostly for hospital appointments with Mum. My memories of it were parking stations, waiting rooms, vending machine coffee, and doctors saying words like management when they meant not cured. Edgar seemed to know where my thoughts had gone. "First time coming for yourself?" he asked. I looked out at the traffic. First time not counting coins for hospital parking. He didn't say he was sorry. He didn't offer to fix it. He simply said, "Then look properly." A few minutes later, he took a route that gave me a view of the harbor. The water gleamed beneath the winter light, and the harbor bridge curved over it like something too famous to be real. Farther out, the opera house sat bright against the gray-blue morning, its sails sharp and clean. For a moment I forgot to be defensive. Edgar noticed. Of course he did. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said. "Show off." "Yes." I laughed, and his eyes warmed before he turned back to the road. His house, if something that large could be called a house without lying, sat behind black iron gates in one of those Sydney suburbs where even the trees looked privately educated. Sandstone walls rose beyond the gate, softened by winter jasmine and climbing vines. A silver crescent emblem was worked into the iron above the intercom. A security guard stepped from the gatehouse. He looked at Edgar first, then at me. Not rudely, closely, as if committing my face to memory. "Welcome home, Mr. Collins," he said. "Morning, Daniel." The gate opened without another word. I leaned closer to the window as we drove up the long drive. Do all billionaires have gates, or is this a personal fear of door-to-door salesmen? Both. You grew up here? Yes. That explains a lot. What exactly? You're calm. It's easy to be calm when your childhood home has a driveway long enough for emotional preparation. He smiled. And your childhood home? Had a backyard cottage and a father with selective hearing. The smile faded. I regretted saying it, not because it wasn't true, but because truth could shift the air too quickly. Before he could respond, the car stopped before the house. The front doors were dark timber, tall enough to make me wonder whether his relatives were secretly giants. Edgar came around to open my door. "I can open doors," I said. "I know. You keep saying that. And you keep objecting after the fact." His hand hovered near mine, not grabbing, only offering. I looked at it for half a second too long before taking it. His grip closed around my fingers, warm and steady. The touch should have meant nothing. It was part of the performance, a detail for the serious faces inside, but his thumb brushed once over my knuckles, and my pulse forgot the script. He didn't release me immediately. "Before we go in," he said quietly, "if anyone makes you uncomfortable, tell me. I'm always uncomfortable in expensive places. I mean it. So do I." His gaze held mine. Yvonne. There it was again. My name in that voice. Calm, low, impossible to dismiss. "I'll be fine," I said. "I know you can handle yourself." "Good. But you don't have to handle them alone." Something in me shifted. I didn't have a sarcastic answer ready for that, which was frankly inconsiderate of him. Instead, I looked toward the enormous doors. "Are they as terrifying as you?" "Worse." "Excellent. I wore the right boots." He laughed softly, then led me inside. The entrance hall could have swallowed Mum's cottage without chewing. Black and white stone floors stretched beneath a sweeping staircase. Winter sunlight fell through tall windows onto old portraits in polished wood. Everything smelled faintly of cedar, smoke, and something wild underneath it, like rain on eucalyptus. People were waiting in the drawing room. Not many. Enough. A man stood by the window with his hands loosely clasped behind his back. He was older than Edgar, with silver threaded through dark hair and a stillness that made the room feel organized around him. He didn't need to raise his voice. I had the unsettling sense that if he spoke, everyone would listen. Beside the fireplace sat a woman in a cream dress, elegant in a way that looked effortless until you realized nothing about her was accidental. Her eyes were sharp, assessing, and beautiful. A younger man lounged against the arm of a chair, grinning before I'd even done anything. A woman with glossy hair and red boots stood near him, practically vibrating with curiosity. Near the doorway, another man watched in silence, broad-shouldered and unsmiling, his arms folded as if he had been assigned to guard the oxygen. Edgar's hand settled at the small of my back. "Everyone," he said, "this is Yvonne Hart." 5 pairs of eyes fixed on me. I lifted my chin. "Well, this is cozy." The younger man laughed first. The older man came forward. "Brian Collins," he said. His handshake was firm, his gaze direct. "Yvonne," I replied, "your son warned me about serious faces. He undersold you." For one breath, the room went still. Then Brian's mouth moved almost imperceptibly. "Did he?" "Terribly." Edgar sighed beside me. "She does this." "I can see that," Brian said, but there was approval in his voice. The woman rose next. Angela Collins. "Mrs. Collins." "Angela is fine." "Then Yvonne is fine." Her gaze traveled over me, not cruelly, but thoroughly. My jumper, my jeans, my boots, my expression. I stood still and let her look. I'd been judged by professionals. "You're not what I expected," she said. "I get that a lot." "What did you expect?" Edgar asked, voice mild. Angela's eyes remained on me. "Someone easier to frighten." I smiled. That would have been convenient for everyone. The grinning man pushed away from the chair. "I'm Alaire, cousin, occasional disappointment, frequent favorite." "No one calls you favorite," the woman in red boots said, sweeping forward. "I'm Becky. Ignore him. I already like you." Then she hugged me. Just like that. I went stiff out of pure instinct, arms trapped awkwardly at my sides. Edgar made a sound that might have been a smothered laugh. Becky pulled back, beaming. "Oh, she's fun. I didn't do anything." "You didn't scream." "Low bar." "You'd be surprised," Alaire said. The silent man near the door finally spoke. "Nick." He didn't offer a smile. I looked at him. Is that a greeting or a warning? Alaire choked. Nick's eyes narrowed slightly. "Depends." "Good. I like efficient communication." Edgar's fingers pressed lightly against my back, either in warning or appreciation. Possibly both. Lunch was served in a dining room, with a table long enough to require weather updates from one end to the other. Edgar sat beside me, close enough that his knee brushed mine under the table. Each time it happened, I told myself not to notice. Each time, I failed. They asked about Bowrell, my jobs, Mum, the cafe, the motel. Becky wanted to know if I'd always worn boots. Alaire wanted the full story of Joshua's nose, including sound effects if possible. Nick listened more than he spoke, which somehow made every silence feel like a question. Angela waited until the main course was served before setting down her fork. "What do you want from my son, Yvonne?" The table went quiet. Edgar's posture changed beside me. I felt it before I saw it. "Mother," he said. "It's a fair question," Angela replied. Her voice wasn't cruel. That made it harder to hate. I wiped my fingers on my napkin and looked straight at her. "Right now? For him not to abandon me in a house full of people who look like they can hear thoughts." Alaire coughed into his drink. Brian's eyes warmed. Angela did not smile. "And beyond right now?" I could have flirted, lied, said something soft and fake. Instead I said, respect, honesty, the same things I'd give back. I glanced at Edgar, then away before his expression could undo me. "I don't want his money, if that's what you're asking. I don't know him well enough to make dramatic promises, if that's what you're hoping. But I know he was kind to my mother when no one expected him to be. That counts with me." Edgar's hand found mine beneath the table. No one could see it. His fingers closed around mine once, quietly. My heart stumbled. Brian leaned back in his chair. "Is this your choice, Edgar?" "Yes," Edgar said. No hesitation. Brian looked at me. "And yours?" I raised an eyebrow. "Do I look easy to force into anything?" The silence broke. Brian laughed. Not loudly, not for long. But enough that Becky looked delighted, Alaire looked impressed, and Nick looked mildly inconvenienced by the fact that he might have to tolerate me. Angela studied me for another moment. "Edgar's life is not simple. Neither is mine." "No," she said softly. "I imagine not." Something passed through her expression then. Concern, maybe. Not dislike. Concern. That unsettled me more. After lunch, Edgar led me onto a balcony overlooking the harbor. The city gleamed beyond the trees, all water and glass in distant movement. The cold wind cut through my jumper, and before I could pretend I was fine, Edgar slipped off his coat and draped it around my shoulders. "I'm not fragile," I said. "I know. You're very annoying with that answer. It keeps being true." The coat smelled like him. Cedar, smoke, winter. I pulled it close before pride could stop me. "Your family is terrifying," I said. "They liked you." Nick looked like he wanted to bury me under the lemon trees. Nick looks that way at everyone. Comforting. Edgar turned to face me. one hand resting on the stone rail. You handled them well. Your mother asked what I wanted from you like she was interviewing me for a dangerous job. His gaze shifted toward the harbor. In a way, she was. I looked at him. What does that mean? He was quiet for too long. It means my family comes with expectations, he said finally, and I don't intend to let them choose my life for me. Something sharp and unpleasant tugged under my ribs. Have they tried? His eyes returned to mine. Yes. Of course they had. A man like Edgar Collins probably had women lined up across Sydney, all elegant and suitable and trained not to threaten people with cutlery. Should I expect one of them to challenge me in the foyer? I asked. You'd win. That was not the question. His mouth softened. No, Yvonne. There's no one else. The answer was for our fake relationship. It still warmed me like it wasn't. The balcony door opened before either of us could move closer. Allaire leaned out with a grin. If the two of you are finished looking dramatic against the skyline, Becky is planning your future. My what? I asked. Wardrobe, social calendar, possibly hair products. Hard to say. She talks quickly. I stepped back from Edgar, suddenly aware I was still wrapped in his coat. Inside, Becky was already holding her phone. Westfield, Sydney, she announced. Tomorrow morning. I stared. I'm sorry? We're taking you shopping. No, you're not. Yes, we are. I have clothes. Allaire looked at my boots. You have weapons with laces. Nick, from near the fireplace, said, I'm coming. Absolutely not, Becky said. You scare sales assistants. I'm coming, he repeated. Edgar's expression was unreadable, but there was laughter in his eyes. I turned on him. Did you know about this? I suspected. And you didn't warn me? I warned you to wear shoes you could run in. Becky clapped once. Perfect. She's funny. I'm keeping her. I looked around the room. At Becky's excitement, Allaire's grin, Nick's suspicion, Angela's thoughtful silence, Brian's quiet approval, and Edgar watching me as if this strange, glittering world had somehow shifted to make space for me. I had survived lunch with the Collins family. Apparently, my reward was being taken shopping by people who looked like they belonged to a beautiful, dangerous secret society, and judging by the way Nick watched the doors, as if danger might walk through them at any second, I had the feeling Westfield Sydney was going to be the least ordinary shopping trip of my life. By 10 the next morning, Becky Collins had turned shopping into a military operation. She appeared outside my guest room with 2 takeaway coffees, a glossy ponytail, red lipstick, and the energy of a woman who had never once been defeated by a price tag. Good, she said when I opened the door. You're dressed. I looked down at my jeans, jumper, and boots. Was nudity one of the risks? With Allaire in charge, yes. She shoved one of the coffees into my hand. Drink. We leave in 15 minutes. For where? Westfield, Sydney. I stared at her. That wasn't a threat when you said it yesterday. It was a promise. Before I could retreat, Allaire appeared behind her wearing sunglasses indoors and carrying a scarf that definitely did not belong to him. Morning, future, trouble. Do not call me that. Edgar said you prefer accurate labels. I prefer silence. Nick stepped into the corridor behind them, dressed in black, expression unreadable. He looked less like a man going shopping, and more like someone assigned to prevent an assassination. I pointed at him. Why is he coming? Nick looked at Becky. Because someone has to keep you all alive. We're buying clothes, I said. Exactly. From the far end of the hallway, Edgar's voice drifted toward us. He isn't joking. I turned before I meant to. Edgar stood near the staircase in a dark coat, one hand in his pocket, hair still damp from a shower. The sight of him shouldn't have tugged at anything inside me. It did anyway. His gaze moved over me slowly, not in a way that stripped, but in a way that noticed. My boots, my tight grip on the coffee, the curl falling near my cheek, the uncertainty I hoped I had buried beneath sarcasm. Are you abandoning me? I asked. I have a meeting with my father. Convenient. I trust Becky. I don't. Smart girl, Allaire said. Becky hit him with the scarf. Edgar came closer, and the corridor seemed to narrow around him. If it becomes too much, call me. It's shopping, not hostage negotiation. With Becky, there's overlap. Becky gasped. Betrayal from my own blood. I looked at Edgar. If I return wearing feathers, I'm blaming you. His mouth curved. You'd make feathers dangerous. For a second, no one else existed. His eyes held mine, warm with amusement, and something steadier beneath it. Then Becky made a dramatic choking noise. Please save the romantic staring for after I've fixed her wardrobe. My wardrobe isn't broken. No, Becky said kindly. It's just preparing for war. I took a long drink of coffee. I can still go back to Bowral. Nick, already turning toward the stairs, said, Not without passing me. I hated that I laughed. Westfield Sydney was not a shopping center. It was a polished maze designed to make poor people sweat. Glass railings curved above escalators. Perfume floated through the air in expensive clouds. Everywhere I looked, mannequins stood in coats that cost more than my monthly rent would have been if I paid rent to anyone other than bad luck. People moved through the place with glossy bags and calm faces, like spending half a paycheck before lunch was normal human behavior. Becky walked ahead like a queen returning to her kingdom. Allaire drifted beside me, sipping iced coffee. You look like you're planning an escape route. I am. Nick already blocked the closest one. Nick didn't look back. Correct. 2 more Collins relatives had joined us at the entrance. Mara, who wore silver hoops and had the sharpest eyeliner I'd ever seen, and Theo, who looked barely 25 and kept grinning at everything I said, like he'd been warned I might bite. They all moved together with strange ease. Not crowded, not sloppy, just aware of each other in a way I couldn't explain. If Becky slowed, Allaire shifted without looking. If someone came too close, Nick stepped into the space before they reached us. It wasn't obvious enough for normal people to notice. Unfortunately for everyone, I had spent my life noticing danger. Do you people always travel like a security detail? I asked. Mara smiled. Only when Becky shops. That doesn't answer my question. No, she said. It doesn't. I looked at Allaire. He lifted both hands. I'm decorative. Ask Nick. Nick stopped outside a boutique with lighting so soft it made the clothes look blessed. Don't ask me. Becky clapped once. First stop. I read the name above the door and felt immediate financial distress. Absolutely not. You haven't looked at anything yet. I can smell the prices. Allaire sniffed the air theatrically. Notes of silk, debt, and poor decisions. Exactly. Becky hooked her arm through mine. We're just trying things on. That is how shops lure you in. Next thing you know, someone says, it's an investment piece, and I black out. Nick's mouth twitched. I saw it. So did Becky, who looked delighted. She made Nick almost smile. We're keeping her. The first dress Becky handed me was green, soft, and dangerous. The second was black, and had a neckline I didn't trust. The third looked like something worn by women who never had to check their bank app before buying petrol. I stood in the fitting room staring at the pile. Everything okay? Becky called. No, these clothes have ambition. Put on the green one. I'm not emotionally ready. Yvonne. Fine. The dress slid over me like it had opinions. Long sleeves, a fitted waist, fabric heavy enough to skim instead of cling. When I stepped out, Becky went silent. That was concerning. Allaire removed his sunglasses. Oh, Edgar is doomed. Shut up. I mean that respectfully. Mara tilted her head. That color loves you. Theo nodded, like aggressively. Nick looked at me once, then away. No. Becky spun on him. Excuse me? No, he repeated. I folded my arms. Is it bad? Nick looked deeply uncomfortable. It's too good. Allaire wheezed. I turned toward the mirror, ready to make a joke, but the words caught. The woman looking back at me still had my face, my curls, my stubborn mouth. My shoulders held like she expected a fight. But the dress changed something. Not made me better. Just revealed a version of me I hadn't had time to meet. A woman who wasn't rushing to work. A woman who wasn't counting pills. A woman who could stand under warm lights in the middle of Sydney and simply exist. My throat tightened. Becky saw too much. She came to stand beside me, softer now. You don't have to buy it. I swallowed. Good, because unless it comes with a second job, I can't. No pressure. I mean it. So do I. Her voice was gentle enough that I looked at her. She smiled in the mirror. Shopping isn't about making you someone else. Not with me. It's about finding things that let people see what's already there. That sounded suspiciously sincere. I know. I'll recover. I laughed, and the sound startled me. Not because it was loud, because it was easy. After that, Becky adjusted strategy. We left the boutique without buying the dress, despite Alaire pretending to mourn it at the door. She took me through stores that didn't make my soul leave my body. I tried on coats, jumpers, trousers, earrings I immediately feared losing, and one pair of boots that made Nick say, "Practical," which from him sounded like applause. At some point, I stopped checking every tag first. At some point, I stopped bracing for humiliation. Alaire appeared wearing a wide-brimmed hat and a long beige coat, then leaned against a display like a detective in a soap opera. "Tell me the truth, Yvonne. Does this say mysterious?" "It says you sell illegal sourdough." Theo collapsed into laughter. Mara put a scarf on Nick while he wasn't looking. He stood there for 3 full seconds before slowly removing it. "No." Becky held up a glittering silver top. "For dancing." "I don't dance." "You look like you dance when angry." "That's called fighting." "Same rhythm," Alaire said. By lunch, my cheeks hurt from smiling. We found a table in a cafe overlooking Pitt Street, our shopping bags piled around us like evidence. I had bought one jumper, a pair of trousers, and earrings Becky insisted were tiny enough not to count. She had also somehow purchased a coat for me while I was distracted by Alaire arguing with a barista about whether oat milk had a personality. I discovered the coat only when she pushed the bag toward me. "No," I said immediately. "Yes." "Becky, consider it a welcome gift. I don't take expensive gifts. It was on sale." "How much?" She took a sip of her drink. "Emotionally, nothing." I pushed the bag back. "I'm serious." "So am I." Her bright expression softened. "Let me be nice to you without turning it into a debt." The words landed too close to things I didn't like touching in public. "I have enough debts," I said quietly. "I know." Becky leaned forward. "This isn't one." I looked away, jaw tight. Outside, Sydney moved in streams of coats and umbrellas, strangers living lives that didn't pause for anyone's pain. I thought of Mum in the cottage, probably pretending not to worry, probably folding laundry she had already folded. "I'm not used to this," I admitted. "To coats?" "To people giving without wanting a piece of me back." The table went still. Alaire's teasing expression faded. Mara looked into her coffee. Even Nick stopped scanning the crowd for half a breath. Becky reached across and squeezed my hand. "Then we'll start small." I glanced at the bag. "It's a coat," she said. "Not a marriage contract. I've met your family. Those might be the same thing." Alaire perked up. "She's learning." Nick muttered, "Unfortunately." And just like that, the heaviness broke. I kept the coat. For the rest of the afternoon, I let them pull me through the bright, impossible world of Westfield Sydney. Becky taught me the difference between looking polished and looking trapped. Mara showed me which earrings wouldn't catch in my curls. Theo bought everyone cinnamon donuts. Alaire tried to convince me to let him choose a handbag shaped like a cat. Nick carried 3 shopping bags without complaint, and threatened a man with one look when he bumped my shoulder without apologizing. I could have handled that, I told him. "I know." I narrowed my eyes. "Has Edgar been teaching all of you that answer?" "No," Nick said. "We knew it first." I didn't know why that warmed me. Late afternoon settled silver over the city by the time Edgar found us near the glass railings outside another store. I had changed into the new wine-colored jumper because Becky claimed it was criminal to put my old one back on. My hair had been loosened from its clip, my earrings caught the light, and the coat, a traitorous, beautiful thing, hung over my arm. Edgar stopped walking. Only for a second. But I saw it. So did everyone else. Allaire whispered, "Doomed." Edgar ignored him. His gaze moved over me with such quiet focus that the noise of the shopping center thinned around us. "Successful trip?" he asked. I survived. That wasn't my question. I bought earrings and lost several arguments. "She kept the coat," Becky said proudly. Edgar's eyes softened. "Good. You don't get to look pleased. This was coercion. I'm sure you were helpless. Obviously." He stepped closer and lifted a loose tag from the sleeve of my jumper. His fingers brushed my wrist as he turned it over, and my breath caught before I could stop it. His voice lowered. "This suits you. It's wool. It's still true." My pulse behaved like an idiot. A woman passing behind him glanced at Edgar, did a double take, then looked at me with open curiosity. I felt the old instinct rise, chin up, shoulders hard, prepare for judgment. Edgar noticed before I moved. His hand settled lightly at my back, warm through the jumper, not possessive enough to trap me, just present enough to say I wasn't standing there alone. The woman looked away. I hated how much I needed that. Becky appeared between us with a grin sharp enough to cut glass. Now that Edgar has finished silently composing poetry, we're going to Darling Harbor. I blinked. We are? Dinner, lights, dessert by the water, very romantic, very touristy, very necessary. I thought this was a shopping trip. It was. Now it's evening. Allaire spread his arms. Sydney has layers. Nick looked displeased. It'll be crowded. It's Darling Harbor on a Saturday, Becky said. Of course it'll be crowded. That wasn't approval. No one asked for approval. Edgar's hand remained at my back. Are you tired? Yes. No, I should have been. My feet ached, my social battery was somewhere beneath the escalators, and I had laughed more in one afternoon than I had in months. But the city was glowing beyond the glass, and Edgar was looking at me like the answer mattered. I can manage dinner, I said. Allaire grinned. Brave words. I pointed at him. If this involves more shopping, I'm pushing you into the harbor. Violence really is her love language, he said happily. Edgar leaned closer, his breath warm near my ear. Remind me not to stand near the water. The shiver that moved through me had nothing to do with winter. I looked up at him, ready with a reply, but his face was too close, his eyes too steady, his mouth curved in a way that made every thought in my head stumble. For one dangerous second, I wondered what would happen if I stopped pretending not to want him closer. Then Becky clapped her hands. Darling Harbor, she announced. Let's go before Yvonne changes her mind. I should have changed my mind. I should have gone back to the Collins estate, called Mum, and stayed safely away from crowds, cameras, water features, and men who made fake feel frighteningly real. Instead, I followed them toward the city lights, Edgar's hand warm at the small of my back, and told myself one more evening couldn't possibly get me into trouble. Darling Harbor at night looked like Sydney had emptied its jewelry box into the water. Lights trembled across the black surface, gold and blue and white, broken by the slow movement of ferries and the ripple of cold wind. Restaurants glowed along the promenade. Music drifted from somewhere near the water. People moved in laughing clusters, rugged up in coats and scarves, pretending late winter wasn't trying to bite their fingers off. Becky walked ahead like she owned the harbor. Allaire followed with 2 bags of cinnamon donuts and the confidence of a man who believed snacks solved most emotional problems. Nick stayed behind us, silent and watchful, which made every tourist with a selfie stick look vaguely suspicious. Edgar walked beside me, close enough that his sleeve brushed mine every few steps. You're doing that on purpose, I said. He glanced down. Walking? lurking attractively. His mouth curved. Attractively? I said lurking. Focus on the crime. I'll try. Becky spun around, walking backwards. I heard flirting. You heard slander, I said. I heard chemistry. Allaire lifted a donut. I heard dinner calling. Dinner was at a harborside restaurant with glass walls and waiters who moved like they'd been trained not to judge people by their boots. Edgar pulled out my chair before I could stop him. I gave him a look as I sat. I'm capable. I know. If you keep saying that, I'll start charging you. His hand rested briefly on the back of my chair, his fingers close enough to graze my shoulder. What's your rate? Unaffordable. I'm intrigued. I picked up the menu to hide the fact that my face had warmed. Across the table, Becky watched us with open delight. Nick looked like he wanted to be transferred to another family. The evening slipped forward too easily. That was the dangerous part. Allaire told a dramatic version of our shopping trip, in which I had apparently terrified 3 sales assistants, rejected a handbag shaped like a cat, and caused Nick to experience near-human joy over a pair of boots. Becky argued every detail. Nick denied nothing, which made it worse. Edgar listened more than he spoke, but he kept noticing me. When I reached for water, he slid the glass closer. When the waiter passed behind my chair too quickly, Edgar's hand shifted to shield the back of my shoulder. When a woman at the bar looked him over with slow, practiced interest, I pretended not to care so hard I nearly cracked a tooth. He leaned closer. If you glare any harder, she'll combust. I'm looking at the harbor. The harbor is behind me. Then move. His eyes warmed. Jealousy suits you. I nearly stabbed my fork through a lemon wedge. Careful, Collins. Edgar, he corrected softly. The way he said it, low, private, for me alone, made the noisy restaurant fade at the edges. I looked away first. After dinner, I stepped outside to call Mum. She answered on the 3rd ring, breathless like she'd rushed from her chair. Are you all right? She asked. I'm fine. Sydney hasn't eaten me yet. That's good. A pause. You sound happy. The words landed gently and hurt anyway. I glanced back through the glass. Edgar stood near the door, giving me space but staying close enough that I knew he was there. Becky was laughing at something Allaire had said. Nick watched the promenade as if expecting war to arrive between dessert courses. I had a good day, I admitted. Mum was quiet for a moment. Good, sweetheart. You deserve many of those. My throat tightened. Don't get dramatic. I bought earrings, not a new life. Sometimes earrings are a start. I smiled despite myself. When I ended the call, Edgar was waiting with my coat over his arm. Becky's coat, technically. The one I had apparently been adopted into. Your mother? He asked. Yes. Is she okay? She's pretending not to worry, which is her favorite hobby after worrying. He held the coat open. I hesitated, then turned. His hand settled the fabric over my shoulders, careful and warm through the layers. For a second, his fingers rested near my collarbone. Not quite touching skin. Close enough for my breath to lose discipline. You went still, he murmured. I was making sure you didn't strangle me with fashion. That was your concern? One of many. His hands lowered slowly. Tell me the others. I turned before I could answer, which was wise, because every honest reply had become inconvenient. By midnight, the crowd had thinned, but not disappeared. Darling Harbor still hummed, couples strolling along the water, friends taking photos, a busker playing guitar under a wash of blue light. Becky had found hot chocolate somewhere. Allaire had powdered sugar on his coat. Nick had somehow become even more suspicious of pigeons. Near the promenade, a fountain splashed in neat silver arcs, the water catching the lights like broken glass. Allaire tossed a coin into it. Make a wish. I wish you'd stop wasting money in public water features, I said. That's not romantic. Neither is tetanus. Becky laughed. Yvonne, make a wish. I don't have any wishes. Edgar looked at me. No? I folded my arms, aware of the fountain mist dampening the ends of my curls. Wishes are for people who have spare hope lying around. His expression changed, amusement softening into something quieter. "What would you wish for?" he asked, "if you did?" I should have made a joke. Instead, the cold and the lights and the long, strange day loosened something in me. "Mum, well," I said. "Enough money. A week of sleep without feeling guilty for taking it." His gaze held mine. "And for yourself?" I laughed once, but it came out too thin. I forgot those were allowed. Edgar took a coin from his pocket and offered it to me. Our fingers brushed. The contact was nothing. Barely a touch. But my body remembered every other accidental touch before it and made a terrible argument for more. I took the coin. "If this wish summons a violinist, I'm blaming you." "I'll accept the risk." I stepped backward toward the fountain edge, preparing to toss the coin with dramatic contempt. My boot hit a slick stone. The world tilted. For one ridiculous second, I saw Edgar's eyes widen. Then I went straight into the fountain. Cold water swallowed my gasp, soaked my jumper, rushed into my boots, and slapped every sensible thought out of my head. I surfaced, sitting in water barely deep enough to drown a sandwich, spluttering with outrage. "Oh my God!" Becky shouted. Allaire's laugh burst out before he could stop it. "Don't," I warned, wiping water from my eyes. Edgar was already moving. "Yvonne." "I'm fine," I said. "I have been defeated by architecture, not death." He stepped into the fountain anyway, reaching for me with that calm, focused expression that made my chest do stupid things. Then his polished shoe slid. For the first time since I'd met him, Edgar Collins lost control of his body. He went down hard enough to send water over both of us. Silence held for half a second. Then I laughed. I tried not to. I truly did. But he sat there in the fountain, soaked from shoulder to knee, hair falling over his forehead, looking so utterly betrayed by gravity that I lost the fight. He stared at me. Then he laughed too. Not politely. Not quietly. A real laugh, warm and helpless, spilling out of him until I had to press a hand to my stomach. "You jumped in to rescue me from 6 inches of water," I managed. "You looked endangered." I was embarrassed. Similar symptoms. Water dripped from his jaw. I reached out without thinking and brushed it away with my thumb. His laughter faded. So did mine. The harbor noise blurred around us. His hand came up, closing gently around my wrist, not pulling me away, holding me there. His eyes searched mine, still bright with laughter, but something else waited underneath. I tried to stand. My boot slipped again. Edgar caught me. I fell forward, my hands landing against his chest, and his arms tightened around my waist. Our faces came too close too fast. My mouth brushed his. Just a breath. An accident. But the world stopped, as if it had been waiting for permission. His lips were cold from the water and warm beneath it. The kiss lasted no longer than a heartbeat. Not long enough to be claimed. Far too long to be dismissed. When I pulled back, his gaze dropped to my mouth, and the air between us changed so sharply I forgot we were sitting in a public fountain like idiots. A whistle cut through the moment. "Oi! Out of the fountain!" Security approached with a torch and the expression of a man deeply tired of humanity. At the same time, I noticed the phones. 3 teenagers near the railing, a couple by the steps, a man grinning while recording like he had discovered wildlife. Horror hit me harder than the cold. "No," I said, scrambling up with Edgar's help. Water poured from my coat. "Please don't post that." One of the teenagers laughed. "It's cute." "It's wet," I snapped, "and humiliating. Please delete it." Edgar stepped beside me, dripping onto the pavement, his hand steady at my back. His voice stayed calm, but it carried in a way that made people listen. "She asked you not to post it." Nick appeared behind the group like a shadow with shoulders. "Delete it." The teenager's smile vanished. Alaire, still fighting laughter, added, "Best to do what the terrifying one says." "I'm serious," I said, clutching the soaked coat around me. My teeth had started to chatter. "Social media will invent stories I'm not ready for. My mother will worry. My town will make it ugly. Please." That softened some faces. A woman lowered her phone first. "I'll delete it, love." "Thank you." Others followed, embarrassed now that the entertainment had developed feelings. Security pointed toward the path. "Out. Both of you. Now." "We're out," I said. "We are aggressively out." Edgar glanced at me, and despite everything, his mouth twitched. "Do not laugh," I warned. "I wouldn't dare." "You absolutely would." Becky wrapped another coat around my shoulders while muttering about pneumonia. Alaire offered me a donut for trauma. Nick took one look at Edgar and said, "Your mother is going to ask questions." "She usually does," Edgar replied. The drive back to the Collins estate was painfully quiet. Not awkward because nothing had happened. Awkward because something had. Edgar sat beside me in the back seat, both of us damp, wrapped in borrowed warmth. Every time the car turned, our knees touched. Neither of us moved away quickly enough. I stared out at Sydney's blurred lights and told myself the kiss had been an accident. A cold, ridiculous, public accident. Then Becky's phone chimed from the front seat. She went very still. Alaire leaned over. "What?" "Nothing," she said too quickly. My stomach dropped. "Becky." She turned slowly, holding up the screen. Someone had not deleted it. Under a caption filled with heart emojis and the words "mystery girlfriend," Edgar and I were frozen in blue fountain light. Soaked, breathless, his arms around me, my mouth against his. And beneath it, the views were already climbing. By morning, the fountain video had ruined my ability to die quietly. My phone buzzed against the bedside table like an angry insect, lighting up every few seconds with messages I did not have the emotional strength to read. Becky had sent 17. Alaire had sent a row of drowning emojis. Paige had written, "Is that really you with Edgar Collins?" Joshua's message was shorter. "Knew you'd embarrass yourself eventually." I deleted it and felt better. Then Mum called. I stared at her name for 3 rings, bracing for worry, disappointment, panic. Anything except the soft laugh that came through when I answered. "Sweetheart," she said, "were you trying to swim?" I closed my eyes. "I fell into a fountain, Mum. I didn't declare war on the harbor." "And Edgar fell in after you?" "He attempted a rescue." "From ankle-deep water?" "He's very committed to drama." Mum laughed again, and the sound loosened something in my chest. "You looked happy." That silenced me. On the screen, the paused video showed a version of me I barely recognized. Soaked, laughing, caught in Edgar's arms beneath blue lights. Not tired, not angry, not guarding the world with my teeth. Happy. "It was an accident," I said. "The fall or the kiss?" My face warmed. "Goodbye, Mum." "Enjoy your day, Yvonne." I ended the call before she could start humming wedding music through the phone. The Collins estate was too large for a woman with poor sleep and no sense of direction. After showering in my room, I went searching for coffee and somehow ended up in a quiet corridor lined with framed black and white photographs. Every door looked expensive. Every handle looked like it belonged to someone who used the word estate without irony. I found what I thought was a bathroom. It was not. Steam rolled over me the moment I pushed the door open. Edgar stepped out of the shower. Wet, bare, utterly unbothered. For one full second, my brain abandoned me. Water ran from his dark hair down the strong line of his neck, over broad shoulders, and a chest carved with the kind of unfair detail that made words feel useless. My gaze dropped before common sense could tackle it, past the hard planes of his stomach, lower than was decent, before I snapped my eyes back up so fast I nearly injured myself. He reached for a towel with the calm of a man answering emails. "Morning," he said. I grabbed another towel from a hook and clutched it in front of my own chest, which made absolutely no sense because I was wearing clothes and he was the scandal. "What are you doing here?" His brows rose. "Showering." "In my bathroom?" "This is my bathroom." I looked around in horror. The sleek stone vanity, the dark robe hanging on the door, the masculine scent of cedar and shower gel, the open doorway beyond him leading into a bedroom with a huge bed and rumpled gray sheets. "Oh no," I whispered. "I've entered rich people territory." Edgar wrapped the towel low around his hips. That did not help. In fact, it made things worse, because my traitorous eyes caught the cut of his hips and the unmistakable shape beneath the damp fabric, before I forced myself to study the ceiling like salvation lived there. He noticed. Of course he did. "Yvonne." "Don't say my name while you're—" I waved a hand blindly. "Like that." "Clean?" "Indecent." "I'm wearing a towel." "Barely." His mouth curved. "Would you prefer I remove it so your complaint becomes more accurate?" I spun toward the door. "I am leaving. You came in. By accident. You also stayed." I was in shock. Understandable. I glared over my shoulder and immediately regretted it because he was still standing there, damp and relaxed, like this was normal. Like women wandered into his bathroom every day and developed temporary speech problems. "Stop looking pleased with yourself," I snapped. "I'm trying to be polite." "You are failing nakedly." "I'm not naked anymore." "Not the point." His laugh followed me into the hallway as I escaped, hot-faced and furious with myself for noticing far too much. At breakfast, I sat as far from Edgar as the table allowed. Unfortunately, the table was not far enough. Becky looked between us with suspicious brightness. "Slept well?" "No." Allaire leaned forward. "Bad dreams?" "Bad architecture." Edgar lifted his coffee without looking at me, but his mouth betrayed him. Nick, seated near the window, said, "You went into the wrong wing." I froze. "How would you know that?" "It's a large house. Guests get lost." That wasn't an answer. It was enough of one. I decided I disliked his accuracy. Becky's eyes widened slowly. "Oh my God. Did you walk in on—" "No," I said. Edgar said nothing. Allaire's grin spread. That was not convincing. "I will stab this toast with purpose," I warned. Brian entered before breakfast became a public trial. Angela followed, elegant and observant, her sharp gaze catching on my expression, then Edgar's, then the empty chair between us. She said nothing. Somehow that was worse. The rest of the morning became a series of small, ridiculous battles with proximity. Edgar reached for the milk at the same time I did, and our fingers brushed against the glass bottle. Neither of us moved quickly enough. Later, in the sitting room, he leaned past me to pick up a book from the side table, his chest almost touching my shoulder, his voice low near my ear when he said, "You're holding it upside down." I was judging the spine. Of course. By midday, Becky had declared a storm was coming and refused to leave the house, which meant I was trapped indoors with Edgar Collins and the memory of his shower. Rain swept across the windows after lunch, turning Sydney into a blur of gray glass and silver streets. Thunder rolled in the distance. The estate seemed to settle deeper into itself, fireplaces lit in rooms I kept accidentally discovering. I hid in the library. It was the safest place in the house. Books didn't ask questions. Books didn't emerge from showers looking like temptation with wet hair. I curled into an armchair near the window and tried not to read the comments under the fountain video. I failed. Mystery girlfriend is gorgeous. Edgar Collins finally taken? The way he looked at her, though. That wasn't fake. My thumb hovered over the screen. The door opened. "I thought I'd find you here," Edgar said. "Because I look literary?" "Because you look like someone avoiding people." I locked my phone. Same thing. He came closer but stopped beside the opposite chair, leaving space between us. He had changed into a dark jumper and trousers, dry hair falling slightly over his forehead. Fully clothed, thank God. Still dangerous, unfortunately. About this morning, he began. No. No. We are never discussing it. I was going to apologize. Don't. That makes it worse. His eyes warmed. How? Because then I'll have to pretend I didn't look. The words escaped before I could catch them. Silence. Edgar's expression shifted, the teasing fading into something slower. My lungs stopped behaving. Well, he said quietly, I appreciate your honesty. I hate this house. No, you don't. I hate your bathrooms. Fair. I looked away, but laughter tugged at my mouth despite everything. He sat across from me. For a while, we listened to the rain. Then he nodded toward my phone. Did the video upset you? People are inventing stories. They do that. They don't have to live with them afterward. I rubbed my thumb over the edge of the phone. In Bowral, one rumor can follow you longer than debt. I can have it taken down. I glanced at him. Can you? Yes. Of course he could. Men like Edgar didn't ask the world to move. The world seemed to shift before they spoke. I don't want you fixing everything, I said. I know, I sighed. There it is again. It keeps applying. His gaze held mine. I only meant you have a choice. Choice. The word landed softly between us. What about you? I asked before I could lose courage. Do you regret it? The fall? The kiss? Thunder cracked before he answered, loud enough to rattle the window. The lights flickered once. Edgar didn't look away. No, he said. A foolish warmth spread through me. That wasn't a real kiss, I whispered. No? It was accidental. Then I don't regret the accident. The room felt smaller. I stood too quickly. I should find Becky. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed the library in one breath. I took one step and caught my foot on the rug. Before I could hit the floor, Edgar was there. His arms closed around me. Solid, warm, certain. For a moment I couldn't speak. My hands had landed against his chest, my fingers curled in the fabric of his jumper. His heartbeat thudded beneath my palm, steady and strong. Mine was not nearly as dignified. You moved fast, I said. Long legs. That excuse is becoming suspicious. Are you hurt? Only my pride. His hands rested at my waist, not tightening, not trapping. Waiting. The darkness made everything sharper. The rain against the glass, the warmth of his body, the cedar scent of him, the way his breath touched my cheek. I should move, I said. Yes. Neither of us moved. His thumb shifted once against my side, barely a stroke, and my whole body listened. Yvonne, he said, low and rougher than before. If you say my name like that again, I may do something stupid. What would count as stupid? I lifted my face in the dark. I'm still deciding. His hand came up slowly, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. His fingers brushed a curl from my cheek, then lingered near my jaw. Tell me to stop, he whispered. I should have. Fake relationships had rules, boundaries, end dates, safe exits. This thing between us had none of those. Edgar, the lights snapped back on. We froze. Angela stood in the doorway, one hand on the brass handle, her expression unreadable. For half a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then she looked at Edgar's hand near my face, my fingers still twisted in his jumper, and lifted one elegant brow. Dinner will be in 30 minutes, she said. I stepped back so fast I nearly tripped again. Edgar caught my elbow because apparently he had decided my dignity was a community project. Angela's gaze softened slightly, but concern lived beneath it. Yvonne, Brian would like you to join the family table tonight. I thought I already did. Not that table. Edgar went very still beside me. I looked between them. What does that mean? Angela's eyes met mine, calm and serious. It means, she said, If you're going to stand beside Edgar, even in pretending, you should understand what his family expects from the woman at his side. My mouth went dry. Beside me, Edgar's grip tightened once around my elbow before he let go, and for the first time since this lie began, I wondered whether I had stepped into something far deeper than a fake relationship. By the time Becky finished helping me get ready for dinner, I looked less like a guest, and more like evidence in one of her fashion experiments. She stood behind me in the mirror, pinning one side of my curls back with a silver clip Mara had apparently insisted I borrow. The dress she chose was simple, deep blue, long-sleeved, warm enough for winter, but the fabric fell in a way that made me nervous about my own reflection. "There," Becky said, pleased. "Human disaster, but elegant." I'm choosing to hear only the elegant part. Growth. Allaire leaned against the open doorway, one shoulder propped against the frame. "Edgar is going to forget his own name." I pointed at him through the mirror. "If you say that at dinner, I'll pour soup in your shoes." "We're having roasted lamb." "Then I'll improvise." Nick appeared behind him, silent as regret. "You'll be fine." I turned. "Is that reassurance or a warning?" "With this family?" Allaire said. "Both." The confidence I had been pretending to wear slipped a little. Angela's words from the library had stayed with me all afternoon. If you're going to stand beside Edgar, even in pretending, you should understand what his family expects from the woman at his side. I knew how to scrub motel bathrooms until my hands cracked. I knew how to stretch groceries, smile at rude customers, and hit someone hard enough that they remembered their manners. I did not know how to sit at an important family table in a billionaire's estate and pretend I belonged there. Becky must have seen something on my face because her smile softened. "They're not going to eat you," she said. "Rich people have done stranger things." Allaire nodded. "There was that cousin in Perth." Nick gave him a flat look. "Not helpful." Becky squeezed my shoulders. "Just be yourself." That advice has led to several police warnings in Bowral. "Then maybe be yourself with fewer headbutts." A knock came before I could answer. Edgar stood outside the door. For once, no one made a joke immediately. He wore a dark suit without a tie, the top button of his shirt open like formality had tried to catch him, and failed. His gaze found mine, and whatever amusement had been waiting on his mouth faded into something quieter. He looked at me as though the corridor, the house, the evening itself had paused. My fingers tightened around the edge of the dressing table. Becky exhaled dramatically. "I did warn everyone." Allaire whispered, "Name gone." Edgar ignored them both and stepped inside. "You look beautiful." The words were simple. No performance, no smirk. That made them worse. "Becky bullied me," I said, because sarcasm was cheaper than vulnerability. "I'll send flowers to the victim." "I prefer cash." His mouth curved then, but his eyes stayed warm. "Are you ready?" "No." "Good." He held out his hand. "Neither am I." I stared at his palm. "You grew up here." "That doesn't mean my family is harmless." Behind him, Nick muttered, "Accurate." I took Edgar's hand. His fingers closed around mine, steady and warm. It should have been part of the act. We were walking into a room where people needed to believe we were together. But when his thumb brushed once over my knuckles, my breath caught in a way no audience required. The dining room was not the one we had eaten in before. This one sat deeper inside the estate, past a corridor lined with old portraits and tall windows blackened by night. It was smaller but heavier somehow, with dark timber walls, a long table polished to a shine, and a fireplace burning low at one end. The room held people differently. Conversations hushed when we entered, not awkwardly, but like everyone had felt a shift in the air. Brian sat at the head of the table. Angela sat to his right. Everyone else, Becky, Allaire, Nick, Mara, Theo, and several relatives I had met only in passing, had places already set. One empty chair waited beside Edgar's, mine. That should not have made my stomach twist. It did. Brian rose first, everyone else followed. I blinked. "Oh, please don't do that." Allaire grinned. "Too late. You've been honored." "I haven't done anything." Brian's gaze rested on me, calm and assessing. "You came. That was mostly because Edgar blocked the exit. Edgar glanced down at me. I did no such thing. Emotionally, you did. A low ripple of laughter moved around the table. Even Brian's mouth twitched. Sit, Yvonne. I sat. Edgar took the chair beside me, close enough that his knee brushed mine beneath the table. He did not move away. After a second too long, neither did I. Dinner began with roasted lamb, potatoes, vegetables, and a silence that was not silence at all. The Collins family communicated in glances. Becky kicked Theo under the table without looking. Nick noticed the door opening before anyone else did. Angela watched everything, including me. I had been watched my whole life, but not like this. In Bowral, people watched to judge. Angela watched to measure. Brian passed me the potatoes. Edgar tells us you work several jobs. I took the bowl. Edgar has a large mouth. He said it with admiration. That sounds unlike him. Edgar leaned closer. I admire many things quietly. Try admiring quietly farther away. His laugh was soft only for me. Angela lifted her wine glass. And you save for your mother's treatment? The table stilled by a fraction. I set the bowl down carefully. Yes. That must require discipline. It requires hating waste. And asking for help? I looked at her then. That requires practice. Her gaze sharpened, not unkindly. Do you practice? Badly. Brian watched me for a moment, then said, Honest answer. I've discovered lying in this house is difficult. Allaire coughed into his napkin. She has no idea. Nick shot him a warning look. I narrowed my eyes. What does that mean? Nothing, Allaire said quickly. Family joke. It sounded like a family secret. Edgar's knee pressed lightly against mine beneath the table. Not a warning exactly. More like a reminder that he was there. I let it go, but I did not forget. Halfway through dinner, a young man carrying a tray of fresh rolls stumbled near Angela's chair. The tray tilted. A glass tipped over, spilling red wine across the white linen. The poor boy froze. He couldn't have been more than 19. His face drained of confidence, eyes darting first to Brian, then Angela, as if waiting for punishment. A man near the far end of the table hissed, Careful. The sound hit something old and familiar in me. Before I thought better of it, I stood and reached for my napkin. It's wine, not blood, I said, pressing the cloth over the spreading stain. Although with this carpet, I understand the panic. The boy stared at me. I gave him a look. Don't just stand there grieving. Bring salt. He blinked. Becky laughed first. Theo followed. The tension cracked. The boy hurried out and returned with salt and another cloth. I helped him blot the spill, ignoring the fact that half the room was watching me. Angela had not moved. When the damage was mostly contained, I sat again and realized Edgar was looking at me with an expression that made my heart trip over itself. What? I muttered. Nothing. That face is not nothing. He leaned in, voice low. You see people. I looked down at my plate. Hard to avoid. They're everywhere. His hand found mine beneath the table. Just for a second. A hidden touch, warm and certain, before he let go. Angela saw anyway. Of course she did. After that, something shifted. Theo asked about Bowral and whether everyone there truly feared me. I told him only the intelligent ones did. Mara wanted to know if I had always been able to throw a punch. Becky announced she was taking me to Bondi next, despite my reminding her it was winter and the ocean was clearly a trap. Nick silently placed an extra serving of potatoes on my plate when he noticed I had stopped eating. I stared at it. Did you just feed me? You looked hungry. I can serve myself. I know. There it was again. The Collins family's most irritating form of kindness. Allaire pointed his fork at Nick. That means he likes you. Nick said, It means she's too thin. I am not too thin. You skip meals. How would you know? Nick looked at Edgar. I turned slowly. Edgar became very interested in his glass. Oh, so we're reporting my eating habits now? It came up, Edgar said. In what context? A surveillance meeting? Brian's voice, calm as smoke, cut in. In this family, concern often looks like interference. That should be embroidered on a pillow. Angela's eyes warmed slightly. Becky probably has one. I can by tomorrow, Becky said. By dessert, I had stopped feeling like I was on trial. That was when Angela asked, What do you do, Yvonne, when someone you care about makes a decision you believe is wrong? The room quieted again. I held her gaze. Depends how wrong. Dangerously wrong. I tell them. And if they won't listen, I tell them louder. A few smiles moved around the table. Angela did not smile. And if they still refuse? I thought of Mum hiding pain behind soft answers, of Kevin Hart's polished smile, of all the years I'd been called difficult because I refused to let cruelty pass politely. Then I stay close enough to catch them when the decision breaks, I said. The silence that followed felt different. Not heavy, not hostile. Brian looked at Angela. Angela looked at me. For a moment, something passed between them that I could not read. After dinner, the family scattered into the sitting room, as if I had survived initiation by cutlery. Becky looped her arm through mine and began planning things I had not agreed to. Theo asked if I liked board games. Allaire told me I was officially more entertaining than half their cousins. Even Nick grunted, "Good job," which I assumed was emotional nudity for him. Edgar caught my hand when I drifted toward the terrace doors. Escaping? He asked, considering it. Without me? That depends. Are you going to stop me? His gaze dropped to my mouth and returned slowly. I haven't decided. The air between us tightened. Outside, rain had left the stone terrace shining under the moon. Cold brushed my face as he opened the door and followed me out. The house glowed behind us, warm and golden, full of voices that no longer felt completely foreign. I wrapped my arms around myself. Your family is exhausting. They liked you. They interrogated me over lamb. They do that to people they respect. I'd hate to see what they do to people they dislike. They're less polite. I turned toward him. Angela still isn't sure. He was quiet for a moment. No. The honesty eased something in me, though I didn't know why. Because I'm not from your world? His eyes held mine. Because my world can be cruel. So can mine. I know. He stepped closer, close enough that his warmth reached me through the cold. His fingers brushed the side of my hand. I should have moved. Instead, I let my smallest finger hook around his. A foolish touch. A dangerous one. I didn't hate it, I admitted. What? Them treating me like I belonged. His expression softened in a way that hurt. You could. The words slipped beneath my ribs. Edgar. He lifted his hand to my cheek, stopping just before he touched me, as if still asking permission. I leaned into his palm. His thumb moved gently near my jaw. The terrace, the cold, the entire impossible house seemed to hold its breath. He bent toward me, slow enough that I could have stopped him. I didn't. The door opened behind us, naturally. Angela stepped onto the terrace, graceful and perfectly timed to ruin my life. I'm sorry, she said, not sounding sorry at all. Yvonne, may I speak with you? Edgar's hand fell away. Mother. It's all right, I said, though my heart was still behaving badly. I'm fluent in terrifying women. Angela's mouth curved. Useful skill. She led me along the covered terrace toward the conservatory, where glass walls looked out over the moonlit grounds. For a while, she said nothing. Then, my son cares for you. I nearly tripped. We're pretending. Some pretenses become habits. That sounds like a warning. It is. I faced her. Are you telling me to leave him alone? Angela looked through the glass toward the dark sweep of the lawn beyond. I'm telling you that standing beside Edgar would not be simple. People would watch you, judge you, test you. Some would use your love for others against you. The words should have frightened me. Instead, they sounded too familiar. I've been watched and judged my whole life, I said. As for using people I love against me, let them try. Angela turned back to me. For the first time, her expression softened enough that I saw the mother beneath the elegance. Bravery is not the same as safety. No, I said, but fear isn't safety either. It's just a smaller cage. She studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded once, as if I had answered a question she had not fully asked. Good night, Yvonne. That was all. No approval, no rejection. Somehow it felt like both. Later, I lay awake in the guest room, unable to settle. The house had gone quiet. Moonlight spilled across the carpet in a cold silver sheet. Somewhere outside, wind moved through the trees. Then I heard it. A low sound, distant but sharp enough to raise every hair on my arms. Not a dog. Not exactly. I sat up. Across the lawn, figures slipped from the side of the estate toward the trees. Dark coats, silent steps. Too many of them for a midnight stroll. At the edge of the group, I saw Edgar. He turned once, looking back at the house as if he sensed something, as if he sensed me. My heart thudded. I grabbed Becky's coat, shoved my feet into my boots, and opened the door before common sense could catch up. Whatever the Collins family was hiding, it had just walked into the moonlit woods. And this time, I followed. The sensible thing would have been to go back to bed. I had never had much talent for sensible things. The corridor outside my room was dark, except for the thin silver wash of moonlight spilling through tall windows. The Collins estate seemed different at night, less polished, less welcoming. Shadows gathered in the corners. Every old portrait looked like it knew something I didn't. I pulled Becky's coat tighter around myself and followed the last echo of footsteps down the stairs. No one stopped me. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. Outside, late winter air bit through the coat and woke me properly. The lawn stretched ahead in a sweep of wet grass, shining beneath the full moon. Beyond it, the trees stood black and close together, their branches moving in the wind like fingers deciding whether to beckon or warn. Edgar and the others were already near the tree line. They moved without torches. That was the first wrong thing. Not one of them stumbled. Not Alaire, who could trip over a dramatic pause. Not Becky, who wore soft boots and had one hand tucked into her coat pocket like she was strolling through Westfield instead of walking into the woods at midnight. Nick went ahead, silent as a shadow. Brian followed at the center, Angela beside him, her posture elegant even in the dark. Edgar walked slightly apart. I hated that I noticed him first. He wore black, his coat open against the cold, his dark hair stirred by the wind. He looked back once, toward the house. I flattened myself behind the nearest hedge, heart kicking. For a moment I thought he had seen me. Then Nick stopped. Every muscle in me locked. He turned his head, not quite looking in my direction. More like listening, or smelling the air, though that was ridiculous. Problem? Brian asked quietly. Nick's voice carried through the cold. Something shifted. Alaire glanced around. Very poetic. Terrifying, but poetic. Edgar remained still. My breath pressed painfully against my ribs. Then Becky laughed softly. Probably possums. Sydney ones have no respect for privacy. Nick didn't answer, but after a few seconds he moved on. Only when they disappeared into the trees did I breathe again. I should have turned back then. Instead, I waited until the distance felt safe and slipped after them. The woods behind the estate were thicker than they had looked from my window. Damp leaves softened my steps. Branches snagged at the coat. More than once I had to stop and listen, following the low murmur of voices through the trees. Growing up around Kevin Hart had taught me how to move quietly. How to hear anger before it entered a room. How to know when adults were speaking secrets they thought belonged only to them. Ahead, the trees opened into a clearing washed bright by moonlight. I crouched behind a wide trunk and peered around it. Everyone had gathered in a loose circle. More people waited there. Faces I recognized from dinner, from breakfast, from hallways where they had smiled politely and pretend they were only Edgar's relatives. Mara, Theo, a few others whose names I hadn't learned. No one looked confused. No one looked like they had followed out of curiosity. Only me. Brian stood near the center, his silver-threaded hair catching the moon. He was not smiling now. The warmth he had shown at dinner was gone, replaced by something older and heavier. "North boundary first," he said. "Then the ridge. No one crosses beyond the old fence without Nick's order." "The scent was faint," Nick said. "Could have been passing through." "Or testing distance," Angela replied. A cold thread slid down my spine. Scent? Testing? Allaire rolled his shoulders. "Nothing says family bonding like possible trespassers." Becky gave him a look. "Try not to get distracted by your own reflection in the creek this time." I was admiring moonlight. "You fell in." A laugh almost escaped me. Almost. Then Angela turned to Edgar, and the look on her face erased every trace of humor. "You should have told her." My breath stopped. Edgar's jaw tightened. "Not here." "When then?" "I said not here." "Edgar." His voice dropped, but the woods carried it anyway. "She's human. She has already lived with enough fear." Human. The word landed strangely, too sharp to mean what it usually meant. Angela's expression softened with worry. "Not telling her will not spare her fear. It will only make you the source of it." For a moment, Edgar said nothing. Then he looked toward the trees again. Toward me. I pressed back behind the trunk, pulse hammering. When I dared to look again, Brian had lifted his face to the moon. "Enough," he said. Every voice stilled. The silence that followed was not ordinary. It had weight. Expectation. Brian removed his coat and handed it to Angela. Around the clearing, others did the same, setting jackets and shoes aside with a calm that made no sense in the freezing air. My fingers tightened against the bark. This was the part where I should have run. Brian stepped into the full spill of moonlight. His body shuddered. At first I thought he had doubled over in pain. Then his shoulders changed. Not moved. Changed. The shape of him stretched and broke and remade itself beneath the moon. His spine bowed. His hands struck the earth, fingers becoming something longer, darker, tipped with claws. Fabric tore. A low, terrible sound rolled from his chest. Not quite human, not quite animal. My mind rejected it. Men did not become wolves. Bones did not rearrange beneath the skin. The world did not split open because the moon asked politely. But the creature standing where Brian Collins had been was not a man. It was a wolf. Huge, silver gray. Powerful enough that the air around it seemed to bend. I stumbled back, one hand flying to my mouth. No, 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 no. Around him the others changed. Nick became a black wolf with eyes that cut through the clearing like blades. Angela shifted into a sleek, pale silver creature with a grace that made my terror worse. Becky's transformation was smaller, golden and white, her bright human laughter replaced by a soft snarl. Allaire became a russet wolf and shook himself as if this whole nightmare were merely weather. My throat closed. Then Edgar stepped forward. For one insane second, I saw him as I had seen him in the bathroom that morning. Warm skin, wet hair, infuriating calm. I saw him at dinner, his hand brushing mine beneath the table. I saw him in the fountain, laughing with water on his lashes. Then moonlight covered him. He looked up once, and changed. The shift tore through him like something answering a call older than language. His body broadened, lengthened, reshaped. His hand struck the earth. A growl vibrated through the ground beneath my boots. When it was over, a massive silver wolf stood in Edgar's place, larger than the others. beautiful in a way that made fear and wonder twist together until I could barely breathe. His eyes found mine. Human recognition burned inside them. I stepped back. A branch snapped beneath my boot. Every wolf in the clearing turned. The sound that escaped me was small, broken, humiliating. Edgar moved first, not lunging, not attacking. He took one step toward me, head lowered, ears angled back, a low sound coming from his throat that might have been meant to soothe. It did not. I ran. Branches whipped my face and caught at Becky's coat. My boots slipped on damp leaves. Behind me, the clearing erupted. Movement, sharp huffs, the thud of paws against earth. Then something enormous landed in front of me. I screamed and stumbled backward. The silver wolf stood between me and the dark path. Edgar. My chest heaved. Stay away from me. The wolf froze. Behind him, another shape approached. The black wolf. Nick. He stopped several meters away, watching me with terrible intelligence. Don't, I warned, though my voice shook so badly it barely sounded like mine. Don't come near me. Edgar's wolf lowered itself slowly to the ground. A surrender. A plea. That almost broke me. Then the shape of him shifted again. I turned away with a choked sound, pressing my hands over my eyes, because there were limits to what one night should ask of a person. I heard a body hit the leaves, a rough breath, the rustle of fabric. When I looked again, Edgar stood several steps away, barefoot, wrapped in a dark coat someone must have thrown to him. His face was human. That made it worse. Yvonne, he said. The sound of my name in his voice nearly undid me. I backed away. What are you? Pain crossed his face. Please let me explain. What are you? He swallowed. A werewolf. The word should have been laughable. It wasn't. The woods seemed to tilt around me. I looked past him at the watching wolves, at the impossible eyes glowing beneath the moon. All of you? Yes. My breath came too fast. Becky? Yes. Alaire? Nick? Your parents? Yes. I laughed once, but there was nothing amused in it. Of course the entire family dinner was a supernatural group project. Yvonne, you let me sit at that table. My voice cracked, and I hated that it did. You let me eat with them, laugh with them, trust them. I never wanted to hurt you. No, you just forgot to mention the part where you turn into a wolf. I wanted to tell you. Then why didn't you? His silence was its own confession. I shook my head. Was any of it real? His eyes sharpened with hurt. Yes. The fake relationship? That stopped feeling fake to me a long time ago. For 1 second, I wanted to believe him so badly. It frightened me. Then the silver wolf rose in my memory again. The tearing shift, the claws, the lies sitting politely across from me at dinner. You don't get to say that now, I whispered. He took one careful step closer. You're safe with me. I flinched. He stopped immediately. Good. At least one of us knew how to stop. I was never safe, I said. I was ignorant. That isn't the same thing. It feels the same when everyone else knows the rules. His face twisted. From the trees, Angela's human voice called softly, Yvonne, breathe. I spun toward the sound. She stood partly in shadow now, wrapped in a long coat, expression gentle and cautious. Don't, I said. Don't mother me after lying to my face. Her mouth closed. Edgar's hands curled at his sides. I should have told you sooner. Yes, I said. You should have. The cold finally reached me properly. It sank through the coat, through my dress, into my bones. Or maybe that was the shock. I pulled my phone from my pocket with shaking fingers. No signal. Of course. Yvonne, Edgar said again, softer this time. Come back to the house. We'll talk. I'll tell you everything. everything, as if truth were something he could hand over now that I had caught him hiding it. I looked at him, at the man who had held my mother's fragile hope so carefully, who had fallen into a fountain for me, who had looked at me like I was not difficult to love. Then I looked at the moonlit clearing full of monsters wearing familiar faces. I need to go home. His expression changed. It's the middle of the night. I didn't ask for your permission. I'm not trying to control you. No, I said, stepping around him. You just decided what I deserved to know. He reached out, then stopped before touching me. That restraint hurt more than if he had tried. Please, he said. I had never heard Edgar Collins sound helpless before. I almost turned back. Almost. But the wolf was still behind his eyes, and the lie was still between us, and if I stayed another second, I might let my heart argue with my survival. Don't follow me, I said. His face went still. I walked away before I could see what that did to him. By the time I reached the estate, my legs were shaking. I didn't remember crossing the lawn or climbing the stairs. In my room, I shoved clothes into my bag without folding them, left Becky's silver clip on the dresser, then paused with the coat still around my shoulders. My fingers closed over the soft fabric. For one weak moment, I pressed it to my chest. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Mum lit the screen. Are you coming home soon, sweetheart? The cottage feels too quiet tonight. My vision blurred. I booked the earliest train to Borrell with hands that would not stop trembling. Far behind the house, deep in the woods, a howl rose beneath the full moon. Low, aching, and impossibly familiar. I did not look back. The howl did not stay in the woods. It followed me through the Collins estate, slipped under the door of my guest room, and curled around my ribs while I shoved clothes into my bag with hands that refused to work properly. My jumper went in first, then my jeans, then one boot, because apparently terror had robbed me of basic packing skills. I stood in the middle of the room, breathing too hard, staring at the other boot beside the bed like it had betrayed me. Men did not become wolves. Families did not sit across from you at dinner, pass you potatoes, laugh at your jokes, then walk beneath the moon and turn into monsters. Except they did. I had seen it. My phone buzzed on the bed, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. Mum's message still glowed on the screen. Are you coming home soon, sweetheart? The cottage feels too quiet tonight. I pressed a hand over my mouth. The cottage. Mum's lavender soap. The kettle that whistled too loudly. The little table near the window where she liked to sit with her tea, pretending she hadn't been waiting for me to come home. I typed with trembling fingers. I'm coming now. I'll be home soon. I need to see you. No reply came. That was fine. It was late. She'd probably fallen asleep with the phone beside her, the way she sometimes did when pain or exhaustion caught up with her. I told myself that twice, then a third time, because fear had teeth now, and it was chewing through every reasonable thought I had. I zipped the bag too hard. The sound ripped through the room. On the dresser, Becky's silver clip caught the moonlight. I left it there. In the hallway, I made it 5 steps before a soft voice stopped me. Yvonne. Becky stood near the turn of the corridor, wrapped in an oversized cardigan, her hair loose around her shoulders. Without lipstick, without her usual sparkle, she looked younger, more breakable. That made me angrier. Don't, I said. Her throat moved. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry after they get caught. She flinched, and I hated that I noticed. I hated that some part of me still wanted to soften the blow. I wanted to tell you, she said. I laughed once, sharp and empty. That seems to be contagious in this house. Everyone wanted to tell me. Amazing how none of you managed it. I was afraid you'd look at me like this. I tightened my grip on my bag. Like what? Like I'm not Becky anymore. The hallway went too quiet. I saw her as she had been at Westfield, thrusting clothes into my arms, laughing like the world was bright and harmless. I saw the wolf in the clearing, gold and white, alert, impossible. I don't know how to put those two things together, I whispered. Her eyes shone. I'm still your friend. Were you? The question hurt leaving me. Or was I just Edgar's fake girlfriend you were all being nice to because he brought me home? No. She stepped forward, then stopped when I stiffened. No, Yvonne. I liked you because you threatened a lair with soup and looked at price tags like they were snakes. Despite everything, my mouth almost moved. Almost. Then the image of claws cutting through damp earth came back, and whatever fragile thing had risen in me broke again. I can't do this right now. Becky nodded as though it cost her. Okay. I walked past before either of us could say anything worse. Nick waited at the bottom of the stairs. Of course he did. He stood near the front doors, arms folded, face unreadable. If Becky had looked younger, Nick looked exactly the same. Guarded, watchful, carved from duty. I stopped 2 steps above him. Are you here to block the exit? No. Refreshing. Your rideshare won't get through the front gate unless security clears it. I stared at him. Security? It's a private estate. Right, because wolves need gates. Something flickered across his face, too quick to name. We're still people, Yvonne. Are you? He held my gaze. The one who gave you extra potatoes is. That landed in a place I wasn't prepared to defend. I looked away first. Nick opened the door. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of rain, grass, and wet stone. A car's coming up the drive, he said. I told them to let it through. I didn't ask for help. I know. I almost smiled because it was such a Collins answer, and that made me want to cry. Then I saw Edgar. He stood outside beneath the portico, coat open, hair damp from the mist. He looked as if he had been waiting there since I ran from the woods. Maybe he had. The porch light cast shadows beneath his eyes, and for the first time since I had met him, Edgar Collins looked uncertain. Not charming, not teasing, not impossibly calm. Just a man who had hurt me and knew it. My feet stopped on their own. Nick stepped back into the house without a word, leaving us with the cold and the sound of rain tapping against the gravel. Edgar's eyes dropped to my bag. You're going home. Yes. Let me take you. No. Then let Nick drive. No. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. All right. The easy acceptance made my chest ache. I wanted him to fight me. I wanted him to prove he was controlling, so I could hate him cleanly. Instead, he stood there giving me the very choice he had stolen by hiding the truth. I hated that more. Did my mother know? I asked. His expression changed. No. Are you lying? No. I searched his face, desperate to find deception because anger was easier than confusion. She recognized you that night. At dinner. She met me in town once. I helped her with groceries when it started raining. His voice softened. That's all she knows. My eyes burned. Mum had welcomed him because he had been kind. I had welcomed him because he had made me feel seen, and he had been hiding teeth beneath his smile. She invited a wolf to dinner, I said. She invited me. Don't make it sound simple. It isn't. He stepped closer, then stopped himself before crossing the space between us. But it was real. The words pulled at something raw inside me. The fountain. The kiss. The library in the dark. His hand at my back when strangers stared. His thumb over my knuckles under the dinner table. Fake had been safer when it stayed fake. You should have told me before I had to learn in the dark, I said. Pain moved across his face. I know. My rideshare rolled to a stop near the steps, headlights cutting through the mist. Edgar looked toward it, then back at me. Can I call you? No. His throat worked. Can I know when you arrive? I almost refused. Pride rose fast, hot, familiar. Then I thought of Mum's unanswered message. I'll text Becky, I said. He nodded, accepting even that small cruelty. Thank you. I started down the steps. Yvonne. I turned. He lifted his hand, as if he meant to touch my cheek, wipe away the rain clinging there, pull me into the warmth of him, and make everything impossible again. He stopped inches away. "If you're frightened of me," he said quietly, "I can bear that. If you think I used you, I don't know how to bear that." My breath caught. For 1 weak second, I wanted to step into him, to put my forehead against his chest, and let him hold together the pieces he had cracked. Instead, I moved back. "Then you should have trusted me." I got into the car before he could answer. The driver glanced at me through the rearview mirror. "Central Station?" "Yes." He pulled away from the house. I did not look back until we reached the gate. Edgar still stood beneath the portico, alone in the rain. Sydney before dawn looked innocent. Streetlights blurred across wet roads. Delivery trucks idled outside cafes. A man in a beanie dragged bins to the curb. The city moved as though impossible creatures had not run beneath the moon only an hour before. My phone buzzed once. "Edgar, I won't follow. I'm sorry. Please be safe." I read it until the words blurred, then locked the screen without answering. At Central, the station was all cold tiles, echoing announcements, and strangers wrapped in coats. I bought a ticket to Bowral from a machine with fingers that had finally stopped shaking, but still felt disconnected from the rest of me. The Southern Highlands train waited under harsh lights. I climbed aboard and chose a window seat. For a while, no one sat near me. That suited me. I pressed my forehead to the glass and watched Sydney slide away. Platforms, tunnels, brick walls tagged with spray paint. Rows of houses with curtains still closed against morning. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw Edgar changing. Then I saw him laughing in the fountain. Then the wolf again. My heart did not know which version to fear. I called Mom when the train pulled past Campbelltown. It rang until voicemail. "Hi, sweetheart," her recorded voice said, soft and tired. "Leave me a message if I've missed you." I swallowed hard. "Mom, it's me. I'm on the train. I'll be home soon, okay? Don't worry, just call me when you wake up." I ended the call and stared at the screen. No new messages. Maybe she was sleeping. Maybe she had left the phone in the kitchen. Maybe she was changing sheets, washing clothes, performing the quiet morning rituals she never wanted anyone to see. I built excuses until they became walls, then sat behind them and prayed they would hold. Outside the window, the city thinned into damp paddocks and bare-limbed trees. Fog lay low in the gullies. Fences ran silver with frost. The closer we came to Bowral, the more familiar the landscape became, and the less real the night in Sydney felt. Maybe I had dreamt it. Maybe grief and exhaustion had invented wolves out of rich people and moonlight. Then my phone lit up with a message from Becky. "He let you go because you asked him to, not because he wanted to. Please text when you get home." I closed my eyes. That was exactly the sort of thing Becky would say. My friend. The wolf. Both. I did not know how to grieve someone who was still alive. When the train finally slowed into Bowral, the station sign appeared through the rain-spotted glass like a verdict. Home. The word should have comforted me. Instead, unease slid cold through my stomach. I stepped onto the platform with my bag over one shoulder and called Mum again. Voicemail. This time, I did not leave a message. A taxi waited near the curb outside the station. The driver recognized me before I opened the door. "Yvonne Hart?" "Depends who's asking." He gave a nervous little laugh. "Your dad's place?" "My mother's cottage." That killed the conversation. Good. Bowral passed by in gray morning fragments, closed shop fronts, wet gardens, old brick buildings, winter trees stretching bare fingers toward the sky. Everything looked the same. That felt cruel. The world should not have been allowed to remain ordinary after a night that had torn mine apart. I checked my phone again. Nothing. "Can you go faster?" I asked. The driver glanced at me in the mirror. "Roads are slick." I didn't ask if the roads were confident. He pressed the accelerator a little harder. When we turned onto the familiar lane, my chest tightened. The main house appeared first, polished and smug behind its neat fence. Kevin's world. Samantha's curtains. Paige's pretty life arranged where everyone could see it. Then the taxi rolled farther down, toward the smaller track behind the property. Toward Mum. I leaned forward. Something flashed blue through the trees. At first I thought it was reflected sky. Then red followed it, pulsing over wet leaves, over the fence, over the narrow path to the cottage. Police lights. My bag slid from my lap. "No," I whispered. The taxi slowed near the gate, and I saw 2 uniformed officers standing outside my mother's open door. The taxi stopped before I remembered how to breathe. Blue and red lights washed over the wet trees, staining my mother's cottage in colors it had never deserved. The front door stood open. 2 police officers were on the narrow porch. A paramedic knelt beside a black medical bag near the steps, speaking quietly into a radio. For one foolish second, I thought Mum had fallen. Maybe she had hurt herself. Maybe she needed hospital. Maybe this was serious but fixable, and I would storm in, make noise, demand better care, and bring her home. Then one of the officers looked at me. I knew. My hand slipped from the door handle. "No." The driver turned. "Miss?" I shoved cash toward him without counting it and stumbled out into the cold. My bag hit the gravel behind me, forgotten. Rain had turned the path soft beneath my boots, but I ran anyway, slipping once, catching myself on the gatepost. "Ma'am," the taller officer called, stepping down from the porch. "You need to stay back." "That's my mother's house." His expression changed. Not enough for a stranger to notice, but enough for me. I hated him for it. "Are you Yvonne Hart?" I stopped so hard my knees nearly buckled. "Where is she?" "Yvonne, where is my mother?" A woman officer came forward from inside the doorway, her voice gentle in that official way people used when the world had already ended, and they were trying not to make too much noise about it. "I'm Constable Singh," she said. "I'm very sorry." The words reached me without meaning. Sorry belonged to broken plates and late buses. Sorry belonged to people who stepped on your foot in shops. Sorry did not belong beside my mother's open front door. I shook my head. "No, she texted me last night." Constable Singh's face softened. "No," I said again, louder. "She texted me," I replied. She was waiting for me. No one answered. So I called Mum. The ringing came from inside the cottage, thin, familiar, cruel. It played from somewhere near the kitchen table, the cheerful little tune she refused to change because she said it helped her find the phone when she misplaced it under tea towels. I pushed past the officer. "Yvonne," someone said. I did not stop. The cottage smelled like lavender soap, old timber, and rain blown in through the open door. Her mug sat on the table, half full, the tea gone cold. The blanket from her chair was folded over the back, as if she had expected to return to it. Her slippers waited beside the mat, toes pointing neatly toward the bedroom. Neat. Always neat. Even when her body betrayed her, my mother kept her corners tidy. Her phone lay on the table, glowing with my missed call. Below it sat my message. "I'm coming now. I'll be home soon. I need to see you." Delivered, unread. Something inside me tore so quietly that nobody else heard it. "Mum?" I whispered. Constable Singh touched my elbow. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." She led me down the tiny hallway. I had walked that hallway 1,000 times, with laundry baskets, with hot soup, with groceries I pretended hadn't cost too much, with birthday flowers bought from the clearance bucket because Mum liked rescuing things no one else wanted. At the bedroom door, I stopped. My mother lay on the bed beneath a sheet pulled to her shoulders. Her hair had been brushed back from her face. She looked small, too small, as if the bed had grown around her and swallowed everything that made her real. For a heartbeat, I waited for her chest to rise. It didn't. "Mum!" My voice cracked on the word. I went to her and sat carefully on the edge of the bed, because some stupid part of me still worried about jostling her. Her hand rested outside the sheet. I took it between both of mine. Cold. I rubbed her fingers. "You're cold." Constable Singh said nothing. "She hates being cold," I told her, as if that explained the emergency. "She always says winter gets into her bones." My thumb moved over Mum's knuckles. The skin there was familiar, soft in places, rough in others from years of washing what should never have been hers to hide. Her wedding ring was gone, like always, tucked away in a box somewhere because Kevin Hart had made vows look dirty. "I'm here," I whispered. "I came back." But I had not come back in time. I bent over her hand and pressed it to my forehead. The grief did not arrive all at once. It stood outside me first, enormous and patient, waiting for my body to understand what my mind refused to hold. My mother was in the room. My mother was gone. Both things sat together like a language I had never learned. "I was on the train," I said. "I tried calling. I should have—" My throat closed. I should have been here. Instead, I had been in Sydney, laughing in fountains, wearing borrowed clothes, sitting at a rich family's table with wolves, and pretending I belonged somewhere beautiful. My mother had texted that the cottage felt too quiet, and I had been too late. A sound came from the doorway. Not a police officer, not a paramedic. Kevin Hart stood there in a dark coat over expensive sleepwear, hair combed, grief arranged carefully across his face. Behind him hovered Samantha, wrapped in a cream cardigan, one hand pressed to her mouth like she had practiced the gesture. Paige stood farther back, crying silently, her pregnant belly cradled beneath both palms. Joshua lurked behind them with a bruised nose and a look he was smart enough to keep quiet. Kevin took one step into the room. "Yvonne, darling. Don't call me that." He stopped. Constable Singh glanced between us. "Perhaps we should give her a moment." "I'm her father," Kevin said, wounded dignity sliding into place. "This is my family." I looked at him over my mother's still hand. "She was your family too." His mouth tightened. Samantha spoke softly. "This isn't the time for accusations." "No," I said. "You always preferred making them when she could hear." Paige sniffed. "Yvonne, please." "Not today, Paige." Kevin's face shifted, the public mask thinning just enough for me to see the man beneath it. "Your mother had been fragile for a long time." The word hit the room wrong. Fragile, as if Mum had been a cracked teacup, as if life had merely tapped her too hard, as if people had not pushed, and pushed, and pushed. I stood slowly. Constable Singh moved closer. "Yvonne." I kept my eyes on Kevin. "Say that again." His nostrils flared. "I understand you're upset." "No, you don't. Your mother was unwell." "She was lonely," I said. "There's a difference." Samantha's gaze dropped. Joshua muttered, "Here we go." I took one step toward him. He moved back so quickly his shoulder hit the doorframe. Good. At least grief had not stolen everything useful. The taller officer appeared behind Kevin. "Everyone needs to remain calm." I laughed, but it came out broken. "My mother is dead, and you want calm?" The room blurred at the edges. For a second, I thought I might fall. I reached blindly for the bedpost and held on until my fingers hurt. Kevin saw it. His expression softened into something almost convincing. "I found her this morning," he said. "I came to check on her." That lie was so smooth it nearly slid past me. I stared at him. "You never checked on her." His eyes hardened. "You've been away." "I was away for one night." One night is enough for many things. I did not know why the sentence made the air change. Maybe it was the way he said it. Maybe it was Samantha looking down again. Maybe it was the faint, satisfied note tucked beneath his sorrow. Before I could answer, my phone began buzzing in my coat pocket. Once. Twice. I dragged it out. Edgar's name filled the screen. For a moment the room vanished, and the woods returned. The moon, the wolves, his eyes inside a creature that should not have existed. I rejected the call. It rang again. I turned the phone off. Kevin noticed. Of course he did. The Collins man? Don't. I only wondered whether your charming boyfriend knew where you were." The word boyfriend sounded obscene in his mouth. I looked back at Mum, at the peaceful set of her face, at the hand that would never squeeze mine again. My anger, huge and loyal, had nowhere useful to go. It folded inward. My knees gave. I did not hit the floor. Constable Singh caught one arm, but I pulled away from her and sank beside the bed, my forehead pressed into the sheet near Mum's shoulder. That was when the grief arrived. It did not sound like crying at first. It sounded like something being dragged out of me by force. I had broken noses for my mother. I had worked until my feet went numb. I had saved coins, skipped meals, swallowed insults, and promised her a future with clean sheets, closed doors, and no shame. I had promised. "Mom," I sobbed, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." No one touched me. That was the kindest thing anyone in that room did. Time lost its shape after that. Questions came and went. Medical history. Last contact. Next of kin. Funeral arrangements spoken in low voices, as if lowering them made the words less impossible. Eventually, they asked me to step outside. I refused. Then I saw the paramedics waiting with a stretcher, and something in me understood that if I stayed, I would have to watch them take her. So I walked out before my legs failed again. The rain had stopped, but water still dripped from the roof in slow, uneven beats. I sat on the porch step where Mum used to keep pots of rosemary. My bag lay open near the gate, clothes spilling into damp gravel. I could not make myself move. Kevin spoke to an officer near the fence. Samantha and Paige stood beneath an umbrella, whispering. Joshua kept looking at me as if he wanted to say something, and valued his remaining teeth too much to try. A car came fast down the lane. Not reckless, controlled. Expensive. Black. My heart knew before my head did. Edgar stepped out before the engine fully settled. He wore the same clothes from Sydney, rain darkening his coat, exhaustion carved beneath his eyes. Nick got out on the driver's side but stayed near the car, watchful. Edgar's gaze found me instantly. He did not look at the police lights first. Not the cottage. Not Kevin. Me. I wanted to hate that. I wanted to hate him. But when he came toward me, slowing before he reached the porch like he remembered every boundary I had drawn, something inside my chest gave a dangerous, aching pull. "You said you wouldn't follow," I said. His voice was rough. "You didn't text Becky. So you drove here?" "Yes. You should have stayed in Sydney." "I know." But he stayed standing there, close enough that I could see the rain caught in his lashes, far enough that he did not touch me without permission. The space between us hurt. "My mother's dead," I said, because if I softened the words I would break again. His face changed. No shock. No pity arranged for public view. Just pain. Immediate and quiet, as if something precious had been taken from him too. Yvonne. That was all. My name in his mouth. My last piece of strength went. I stood, took one step, and then I was against him. Edgar caught me like he had been waiting for permission to fall apart with me. His arms came around my back, firm but careful, and I buried my face in his chest because I had nowhere else to put the sound tearing out of me. "I wasn't here," I said. His hand moved once over my hair. "Don't do that to yourself." "I left her." "You came when she called." Too late. His arms tightened. Behind us, Kevin's polished voice rose near the police car. "Celine was distressed last night. I tried to speak sense to her about Yvonne's situation with Mr. Collins. Any father would have done the same." Edgar went still. So did I. Slowly, I lifted my head. Edgar looked past me toward Kevin, and the warmth in his eyes disappeared into something cold, controlled, and terrifyingly calm. "What?" he said softly. "Did you say to her?" Kevin turned. For the first time that morning, fear cracked through my father's perfect face.
Kevin Hart's fear reached me before his answer did. It sat beneath the expensive aftershave and pressed linen, sharp and sour in the wet morning air. He straightened as if posture could protect him, as if grief were another social occasion where the correct expression and a quiet voice could keep ugliness from showing. Yvonne stood between us, still clutching the front of my coat. Her fingers were locked in the fabric so tightly I could feel each tremor. "What did you say to her?" I asked again. Kevin glanced toward the officers, then toward Samantha, who looked away too quickly. "Mr. Collins, this is hardly the time." "It became the time when you mentioned my name beside a dead woman's door." Yvonne's grip tightened. Nick shifted near the car. One small movement. A warning. Not for Kevin. For me. The wolf beneath my skin had gone very still. Kevin gave me the sort of smile men used when they believed money made them untouchable. Celine was distressed. She misunderstood things. What things? His eyes flicked to Yvonne. "Family matters." "She was my mother," Yvonne said. Her voice was quiet. That quiet frightened me more than her shouting would have. Kevin softened his expression. "And I'm sorry for your loss, sweetheart." Yvonne stepped back from me so fast I almost reached for her. Almost. She had asked me not to make choices for her. Even now, with grief threatening to fold her in half, I forced my hands to stay at my sides. "Don't," she said. Kevin sighed, wounded and patient. I only tried to explain reality to her. A man like Mr. Collins, a family like his, there are expectations. The words scraped down my spine. I took one step forward. "Be clear." Constable Singh, standing near the porch, watched us closely. Kevin's smile thinned. Celine had built fantasies. She thought Yvonne had found some grand future in Sydney. I reminded her that people in your position don't bind themselves to complications. Yvonne stopped breathing. The whole lane seemed to narrow around that single word. "Complications," I repeated. Kevin lifted a shoulder. "Her illness. The embarrassment attached to it. Bowral may pretend not to talk, but everyone knows. I told Celine that once your family understood what Yvonne came from, they would do what sensible people do." The wolf lunged, not outward, not visibly, but inside me, claws hit bone. Nick was suddenly beside me, his hand closing around my arm with enough force to bruise a human man. "Edgar," he said under his breath. I did not look at him. Kevin's gaze dipped to Nick's hand, then returned to me, pleased that he had provoked something. Men like him loved finding the edge of another man's control. It made them feel powerful. I lowered my voice. "There is no shame in illness." Kevin's nostrils flared. "The shame," I continued, "belongs to the husband who abandoned her for suffering through the birth of his child." Yvonne made a broken sound. I turned at once. She was staring at her father, as if she had never seen him clearly before, though I knew she had seen him too well for too many years. "You told her they rejected me?" she asked. Kevin's eyes shifted. "I said they would." "That's not the same thing," she whispered. "I was trying to spare her humiliation." "No." Yvonne's voice cracked open. "You were trying to make her feel responsible." Samantha stepped forward, cardigan clutched at her throat. "Yvonne, your father didn't mean—" "Finish that sentence and I'll make widowhood contagious." Joshua muttered something beneath his breath. Nick looked at him. Joshua shut his mouth. Constable Singh moved between Kevin and the porch. "Mr. Hart, we need to continue your statement away from the family." Kevin's face hardened. "I've done nothing wrong." "No one said you had," she replied, which was not the same as agreement. She guided him toward the police car. Samantha followed, whispering his name. Paige stayed near the fence, crying silently into one hand. Yvonne swayed. This time I did touch her. Only her elbow, only enough to steady. She turned her face toward me, and the pain in her eyes made every secret I had kept feel unforgivable all over again. "I don't know what's true," she said. The words cut deeper than anger. I bent slightly so my eyes were level with hers. Rain dripped from the porch roof between us, slow and cold. "Let me find out." She laughed once, without humor. "That worked beautifully last time. I deserved that." "Yes," I said. "It did." Her mouth trembled. I did not look away from it, though I should have. Even ruined by grief, even with distrust sitting between us like shattered glass, she still pulled every honest thing in me to the surface. "No more secrets," she said. "No more secrets." She searched my face for the lie. I let her. At last she gave one small nod. Find out what he did to her. I wanted to promise justice, vengeance, blood. Instead, I said the only thing I could keep. "I will." Nick and I started with the police. Constable Singh was careful, professional, and more compassionate than she allowed her uniform to show. She would not give us details that belonged to the coroner, but she confirmed enough to tighten the knot in my chest. No forced entry, no obvious signs of struggle. Celine had likely died sometime in the late hours, after sending Yvonne that final message. "She had medical notes in the bedroom," Singh said quietly, glancing toward Yvonne on the porch. "Old referrals, missed appointments. We'll include everything in the report." "Referrals for what?" Her expression softened. "Depression, chronic distress. Her GP had been concerned for some time." The lane blurred at the edges. Celine Hart had served me tea with shaking hands and smiled as if kindness cost her nothing. She had asked me whether Yvonne laughed in Sydney. She had worried more about her daughter being loved than about her own pain. And all that time, loneliness had been sitting with her in that cottage. Nick's jaw flexed. Did Yvonne know? I don't believe so. Of course she didn't. Celine would have hidden her despair the way she hid everything else. Washed sheets, lowered eyes, careful smiles, suffering folded neatly where her daughter wouldn't find it. The neighbor arrived just before the body was taken. Mrs. Kavanagh was small, silver-haired, wrapped in a coat over pajamas. She stood near the gate, wringing a tissue between her fingers, while one of the officers took her statement. I heard enough from where I stood. "Kevin went down there last night," she said. "Late, around 10, maybe after. I was letting the dog out. He wasn't speaking kindly." Constable Singh asked, "Could you hear what was said?" Mrs. Kavanagh looked toward Yvonne and lowered her voice. "I heard anyway. He said the Collins family knew. Said no decent family would want that mess attached to their name." Celine was crying. She kept saying Yvonne deserved happiness. The officer wrote it down. Mrs. Kavanagh's voice shook. Then he said if Celine loved her daughter, she'd stop ruining her chances. Something in me went cold beyond anger. Nick leaned closer. "Breathe." "I am." "No," he said. "You're planning." He knew me too well. Across the lane, Kevin had finished speaking to the officer. He stood beside Samantha, rubbing at his cuff as if grief had left dirt on him. I crossed the distance before Nick could stop me. Kevin saw me coming and lifted his chin. "I've already spoken to the police." "You told Celine that my family rejected Yvonne because of her." "I told her what people would think." "No." I stepped close enough that his aftershave clogged the air. "You told a lonely, ill woman that she had destroyed her daughter's future." His eyes hardened. "Celine destroyed plenty without my help." For 1 second, all sound vanished. Behind me, Yvonne said, "What?" Kevin's expression shifted too late. She had followed us. Rain had dampened her curls around her face. Her hands hung loose at her sides, but her eyes, God, her eyes were steady. Kevin swallowed. Yvonne, grief makes people hear things. I heard you. She stepped closer. Say it again. He didn't. Coward. Yvonne gave a small, terrible smile. You could insult her when she was alive. But now. Your mother was not well, he snapped. Everyone knew it except you because you refused to see reason. You worked yourself half to death chasing some surgery, pretending it would fix everything. It wouldn't have fixed what she was. I moved before I meant to. Yvonne caught my wrist. Not Nick, not the police. Yvonne. Her fingers were cold against my skin, and the contact stopped me more completely than any command could have. I looked down at her hand, then at her face. Don't, she said. There was no fear in her voice, only exhaustion. If anyone gets to break him, she whispered, it's me, and not today. I stepped back. Kevin watched that exchange with something ugly in his eyes. Calculation, perhaps, or jealousy. He saw what passed between us, even now. Trust cracked but not gone. Painful, inconvenient, alive. Constable Singh returned and directed Kevin away again, more firmly this time. Yvonne's hand slipped from my wrist. I missed it immediately. I need to see what she left, she said. You don't have to do that now. Her gaze cut to mine. Don't protect me from my own mother. I accepted the correction with a nod. Inside the cottage, the air felt softer and more brutal than the rain outside. Celine's presence remained in every small thing. The rinsed cup beside the sink, the folded tea towel, the lavender tied in a dry bundle near the window. On the table lay her phone, my last calls to Yvonne unanswered beside her unread message. Constable Singh allowed Yvonne to collect personal items under supervision. Yvonne did not move toward the bedroom. So I did. Not to pry, not to own any part of Celine's grief, but because Yvonne had asked me to find the truth, and truth had never cared whether anyone was strong enough to hold it. The bedside drawer held appointment cards from the local clinic, some months old, some older, a prescription bottle, a folded brochure for counseling services in the Southern Highlands. Beneath those, a small notebook with a worn lavender cover. Yvonne stood in the doorway. Read it, she said. Yvonne, read it before I do. That plea undid me. I opened the notebook carefully. The first pages were ordinary. Grocery lists, reminders, a note to buy Yvonne work socks because hers had holes, a little tally of money saved, most of it crossed out and rewritten. Then the entries changed. Y came home with bruised knuckles again. She says it was nothing. It is always something when it is for me. Another page. Some days the cottage is too quiet. I hear Kevin's new family laughing from the house and wonder if I am already a ghost. Yvonne covered her mouth. I kept reading because she had asked, though every word felt stolen. My daughter thinks surgery will give me dignity back. She does not know she is the only dignity I have left. The last written page was from weeks ago. If Yvonne is loved one day, truly loved, I pray she goes without looking back. I am so tired of being the chain around her ankle. Yvonne sank onto the edge of the bed. I closed the notebook. There were no words built for that kind of pain. None that would not insult it by trying to make it smaller. I knelt in front of her, slow enough for her to pull away. She didn't. Her knees nearly touched my chest. Her hands rested between us, clenched around nothing. I didn't know, she said. I know. I should have known. No. My voice came out rougher than I intended. She worked hard to make sure you didn't. A tear slipped down her cheek. He used that. Yes. She looked at me then, and the distance between us disappeared in one devastating breath. I wanted to take her face in my hands. I wanted to press my mouth to her forehead, her temple, anywhere grief had landed, and promise she would never stand alone again. but I had lied to her too. So I waited. Yvonne reached first. Her hand found the front of my coat again, weaker this time, less like panic and more like surrender. I covered her fingers with mine, not to hold her there, to let her know she could let go if she wanted. She didn't. Constable Singh appeared in the doorway, an envelope in her hand. "We found this beneath Mrs. Hart's pillow," she said gently. "It's addressed to Yvonne." The room tightened around us. Yvonne stared at the envelope as if it were alive. Her name was written across the front in Celine's careful hand. For a long moment, she did not reach for it. Then she looked down at me. Her voice was barely more than breath. "Stay." I closed my hand around hers. "I'm here." Constable Singh placed the envelope on the bed beside us, and the first line showed through where the flap had come loose. "My beautiful girl, please forgive me." The envelope looked too light for what it carried. Yvonne held it in both hands on the edge of Celine's bed, her thumbs pressed against her mother's handwriting as if she could warm it back to life. I stayed kneeling before her, not moving, not breathing too deeply, afraid the smallest sound might break what little strength she had left. At last, she tore it open. Her eyes moved over the first line, then stopped. I watched grief take shape in her face, not loudly, not all at once. It gathered behind her eyes, tightened her mouth, sank its claws beneath her ribs. "Read it," she whispered. "Yvonne, please." So I did. My voice barely held. "My beautiful girl, please forgive me. This was never because you failed me. You were the only good thing I ever made." Yvonne closed her eyes. I continued because she had asked, and because love sometimes meant doing the thing that hurt. "Kevin came tonight. He said the Collins family would smile at you until they knew what I was. He said no family like theirs would want shame attached to their name. I told myself he was lying. But I am tired, sweetheart. So tired. I do not want to be the reason you are turned away from happiness." My hands tightened around the paper. The wolf inside me went silent in a way that was more dangerous than rage. "If Edgar is kind to you, let him be kind. If he loves you, believe him. Do not spend your life saving a woman who forgot how to save herself." I could not read the last line aloud. Yvonne took the letter from me and looked down. Her mother had signed it simply. "Love, Mum." For a long time, Yvonne made no sound. Then she folded over the letter, pressing it to her chest, and the room filled with the kind of weeping that did not ask to be comforted, because comfort would have been an insult. I sat beside her on the floor and stayed. That became the shape of the next few days. I stayed. Not because she forgave me, she hadn't. Not because I deserved a place in her grief, I didn't. I stayed because she asked once, with one broken word beside her mother's bed, and I would have torn the world open before leaving her alone in that cottage, with Kevin Hart breathing nearby. Nick brought clothes from Sydney. Becky sent food Yvonne didn't eat. Angela arrived the second afternoon with lavender tied in brown paper and eyes bright with unshed tears. Brian came with her, quiet and grave, and stood on Celine's porch, as though paying respect to a woman of rank. Yvonne opened the door, saw them, and went still. Angela stepped forward slowly. "I am so sorry." For a moment I thought Yvonne would shut the door. Then Becky appeared behind Angela, clutching a container of soup like a peace offering, and looking utterly miserable. Yvonne's mouth trembled. "If that has kale in it, I'm calling the police." Becky burst into tears. Somehow that made Yvonne let them in. The cottage became crowded with sorrow and careful kindness. Angela washed teacups without asking where they belonged and got every cupboard wrong. Becky refolded the same blanket 3 times. Allaire arrived later with biscuits from a bakery and claimed they were medicinal. Nick stood outside near the gate, making sure Kevin did not cross the path unless Yvonne allowed it. She allowed very little. The funeral director learned that quickly. He was a polished man with soft shoes and a voice designed for grieving people who wanted decisions made for them. He looked at me too often while explaining packages and costs. Yvonne noticed. "She's my mother," she said. The man blinked. "Of course, Miss Hart. Then look at me when you ask what she would have wanted." After that he did. She chose lavender and rosemary instead of lilies. A simple coffin. No glossy speeches from people who had whispered behind Celine's back for years. When the invoice came, I offered quietly to cover it. Her eyes flashed. "Don't buy my grief." "I'm not." "Then what are you doing?" "Honoring your mother." She looked away first, jaw tight, fingers curled around the edge of the table. "I can pay," she said. "I know." That softened something. Barely. In the end, she let me help. Not because she couldn't manage, but because she was too tired to fight every kindness that came near her. The answers came more slowly. Constable Singh shared what she could. Nick found what she couldn't. Medical notes, referrals, missed counseling appointments, quiet warnings from a GP who had seen too much sadness sitting behind Celine's gentle smile. Years of it. Depression. Isolation. Shame left untreated until it became a room with no doors. Yvonne listened at the kitchen table with Celine's lavender mug between her hands. "I was saving for surgery," she said. "I thought if I fixed her body, she'd get her life back. You were trying to give her dignity." "She already had dignity." Her voice cracked. "I was the one who forgot everyone else kept stealing it." I sat across from her, close enough to reach for her and wise enough not to. "Kevin gave her the last push," I said, "but he didn't create the cliff in one night." Her eyes lifted to mine. That truth hurt her. I saw it. But she had asked for answers, not comfort dressed as lies. "So it wasn't just him," she whispered. "No. And it wasn't just me." My chest tightened. "It was never you." She stared at me for a long moment, and the air between us changed. The cottage was cold. Rain whispered against the windows. Her grief sat everywhere, but beneath it was something fragile and living. A thread neither of us knew how to name without frightening it. "If I ask you about your family," she said, "will you actually answer?" "Yes." "No pretty omissions?" "No." Her fingers tightened around the mug. "Do you think I'm weak because I'm human?" The question struck harder than any accusation. "No," I said. "I think you have survived things that would shame men who call themselves powerful." Her gaze dropped. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Cowardice," I said. "I dressed it up as protection because that made me feel noble. But I wanted you to choose me before fear had a chance to speak." She swallowed. "Choice matters to you." "Yes." "And you took mine." I held her stare because I owed her that. "Yes." She looked away, but she did not tell me to leave. The funeral took place beneath a low winter sky. Bowral turned out in dark coats and careful expressions. People came because death made them curious, because guilt made them polite, because Celine Hart had been easier to pity once she was no longer alive to embarrass them. Yvonne walked into the chapel alone at first. Then, halfway down the aisle, her hand found mine. No performance, no lie for the town. Her fingers slid between mine, cold and tight, and every whisper in the room fell away. I held on. Kevin sat in the front row with Samantha and his children, wearing grief like a tailored coat. When the celebrant invited the family to speak, he rose. Yvonne stood before he reached the lectern. "Sit down, Kevin." The chapel froze. His face darkened. "Yvonne." "She asked for quiet," Yvonne said. You don't get to be the last loud thing in her life. He sat. My father, seated behind us, gave the smallest nod of approval. Yvonne stepped to the front. She held no paper. Her hands trembled once before she gripped the lectern. My mother liked lavender soap, burnt toast, and ugly mugs from op shops, she said. She named the possum in the roof Gerald and told me not to insult him because he was only looking for shelter. A few soft laughs broke through tears. She was kind in ways people mistook for weakness. She apologized for taking up space in a world that should have made more room for her. Yvonne's voice shook, but did not fall. She was not her illness. She was not a burden. She was my mother, and I loved her. That was when I knew, not with the fever of attraction, not with the thrill of wanting. Those had been there already, reckless and undeniable. This was quieter, deeper, a truth settling into bone. I loved her, and grief was no place to lay that confession at her feet. At the graveside, rain began again, fine as mist. Yvonne stood while earth struck the coffin, each dull sound landing through her body. I put my coat around her shoulders. She did not shrug it off. Kevin approached afterward. You made quite a display, he said. Yvonne turned her head slowly. Leave. His gaze cut to me. You think he'll stay? Her fingers tightened around mine. I felt the wolf rise. Yvonne did too. She stepped half an inch closer, enough for her shoulder to brush my arm. Not today, she said to me, not him. So I stayed human. Kevin left with Samantha trailing behind him. By evening, the cottage was quiet again. Yvonne sat on the porch step, wrapped in my coat, staring toward the rosemary pots. I sat beside her, our shoulders almost touching. Does your family mourn differently? She asked. Yes. How? We gather. We remember. Sometimes we howl. Her mouth moved faintly. Of course you do. I won't. She looked at me then, and the grief in her eyes met every secret in mine. This was supposed to be fake, she said. It stopped being fake for me. The words sat between us, exposed and breathing. Her gaze dropped to my mouth. Mine dropped to hers. The space between us thinned until I could feel the warmth of her breath, the tremor she tried to hide. I wanted to kiss her with a need that felt almost cruel in the middle of mourning. So I didn't. I rested my forehead lightly against hers instead. You owe me nothing, I whispered. I know, she said. That's the problem. Her hand found mine in the dark. Behind us, the cottage held its ghosts. Ahead of us, the lane stretched toward a life she had not chosen yet. What happens now? She asked. I turned my hand beneath hers and held on carefully. I was about to ask her to come back with me. Then at the edge of the trees beyond the cottage, Nick stepped out of the dark and met my eyes.
Nick did not shout. That was what made the cold crawl up my spine. He stood at the edge of the trees, half swallowed by darkness, his shoulders set and his eyes fixed on Edgar over my head. One look passed between them, silent, sharp, filled with something I didn't understand but felt immediately in the way Edgar's hand tightened around mine. The night changed. A second ago, the cottage had been wrapped in the soft sadness of rain and rosemary, the kind of quiet that settled after too many tears. Now even the trees seemed to hold their breath. I looked from Nick to Edgar. What? Edgar stood slowly, not abruptly, not dramatically. He moved with terrifying control, like a man trying very hard not to frighten me. That frightened me more. Yvonne, he said, his voice low, I need you to go inside. I almost laughed. Almost. My mother was buried today, I said. If the universe wants manners from me, it can send a written request. His eyes flicked down to mine. In the porch light, they looked darker than usual, the hazel threaded with something almost gold. Please. That word did what commands never could. I stood too, his coat slipping from one shoulder. He caught it before it fell, his fingers brushing the side of my neck as he pulled it back around me. The touch was brief, accidental, and still my body noticed it with humiliating precision. Even now. Even here. "What's wrong?" I asked. Nick came closer, his boots silent on the wet grass. "We have company." I stared at him. "You say that like we're expecting guests for tea." "No," Nick said. "I say that like I'm trying not to scare you." "Fantastic. Love that for all of us." Edgar didn't smile. That was when my sarcasm dried up. He turned to Nick. "How many?" Nick's jaw flexed. At least 6 crossed the lower boundary, maybe more behind them. Boundary. The word landed wrong. There were fences around Kevin's property, yes, sagging wire and paddock gates that groaned in the wind. But Nick wasn't talking about those. My fingers tightened inside Edgar's coat. 6 what? Neither of them answered quickly enough. I stepped back. Edgar noticed and turned fully toward me. "Yvonne?" "No," I raised a hand. "Do not do that thing where you both communicate like violent furniture." Nick blinked. "Violent furniture?" "She means standing there looking grim and expensive," Edgar said, still watching me. I shot him a look. Not the time to translate me charmingly. His mouth softened for less than a second. Then the trees moved. Not with wind, with weight. Every hair along my arms lifted. Nick angled his body toward the forest, and something about him altered. His easy humor vanished. His shoulders broadened beneath his jacket. Or maybe it only seemed that way because danger made men like him appear less human at the edges. Edgar reached for me. "Come with me." I stared at him. "Inside?" "To Sydney." The words hit me so suddenly I forgot the trees. "What?" He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to hold his gaze. "I was going to ask properly. I should have asked before this. Come back with me tonight." My heart kicked hard against my ribs. Not from fear, not only from fear. "Edgar, not forever," he said quickly. "Not unless you choose it. Not because I think you're helpless. Not because I want to take anything from you." His voice roughened. "Because something is wrong, and my world has already reached your doorstep." The cottage behind me seemed to shrink. Mum's cottage, her lavender soap, her ugly mugs. The bed where she had held my hand as a child when storms shook the roof. The place I'd spent my life trying to protect, and had failed to protect anyway. "I can't just leave her house," I whispered. "I know. I don't even know what will happen tomorrow." "I know. You lied to me." His face tightened as if I'd pressed a thumb into a bruise. "I did. And now you're asking me to trust you?" "No." He lifted his hand, then stopped before touching my face. Waiting. Always waiting now, as if permission had become holy between us. "I'm asking you to stay alive long enough to decide whether you can." The words sank under my skin. Rainwater clung to his lashes. His hair was damp, his shirt creased from days without proper sleep, and still he looked impossible standing on my mother's porch. Part man, part secret, part mistake I couldn't stop wanting to make. My eyes dropped to his mouth. His breath changed. For one suspended moment, grief and fear loosened their grip. There was only him standing too close, warm in the winter air, looking at me like I was not broken beyond holding. I wanted to kiss him. I wanted to slap him. I wanted my mother. Before I could choose any of those impossible things, a howl rose from the trees. It was not a dog. It was too deep for that. Too long, too full of hunger. It rolled across the wet ground and through the bones of the cottage, stretching into the dark until even the lights in Kevin's main house seemed to dim. Another howl answered. Then another. My blood turned cold. Nick swore under his breath. "They're moving fast." Edgar stepped in front of me so quickly I barely saw him move. One moment he was close enough to kiss. The next, his back was between me and the forest. "Inside," he said. This time it was not a request. Naturally, I hated that. Also, naturally, my feet refused to move. From the trees came a shape, then two, then more. They emerged low to the ground, enormous shadows with eyes catching the porch light in flashes of amber and sickly green. Wolves, but not like the ones I had seen beneath the moon in Sydney. Those had been beautiful in a way that had terrified me. Powerful, sleek, impossible. These looked wrong. Their fur hung in rough, uneven patches. Their ribs showed beneath matted coats. One dragged a hind leg but moved with vicious purpose, lips peeled back from teeth too large for any ordinary animal. The air filled with a smell like wet fur, blood, and something rotten underneath. My hand found the porch railing. "Edgar," I breathed. "I know." Nick moved to Edgar's left. "Car's too far. House is exposed. Take her through the back." "The back is worse." I looked between them. "I am standing right here." Edgar did not take his eyes off the wolves. "Yvonne, go inside and lock the door." A laugh burst out of me, sharp and frightened. Yes, because doors are famous for stopping nightmares. "Now." The nearest wolf lunged. Nick met it halfway. 1 second he was a man, the next he was not. My mind could not hold the change. It happened too quickly and too violently, fabric tearing, bones shifting, darkness folding over itself until a massive black wolf struck the rogue mid-air with a snarl that cracked through the night. I stumbled back against the door. I had seen them change before, from a distance, hidden behind trees and moonlight. This was different. This was too close. This was real enough to smell. The two wolves hit the ground in a tangle of claws and teeth. Mud sprayed across the porch steps. The rogue yelped, twisted, and snapped for Nick's throat. Nick drove it back with a force that shook the earth beneath my boots. Another rogue darted right, toward me. Edgar moved. He shoved me behind him, his arm sweeping across my waist, pulling me so hard against his back that my cheek hit the damp fabric of his shirt. Heat poured off him. Beneath it, something thrummed, wild, restrained, alive. "Don't look," he said. Of course I looked. The rogue stopped at the foot of the porch, snarling. Its eyes locked on me with a focus that made my stomach drop. Not random, not animal panic, recognition, hunger. Edgar's arm tightened around me. A low growl rose from his chest. Not human. My fingers curled into his shirt. "Edgar." He turned his head slightly. His profile was sharp in the porch light, jaw clenched, eyes glowing now with unmistakable gold. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "For this being the way you see me." The rogue leapt. Edgar pushed me backward. I crashed through the open doorway and hit the floor inside the cottage. Pain shot up my elbow. Before I could rise, the air on the porch exploded. A sound tore out of Edgar that was not a cry and not a growl, but something older than both. The cottage light flickered. His body bent forward, muscles straining beneath his clothes. For one horrifying second, I thought the change was hurting him. Then silver burst through the dark. His shirt split across his shoulders. His hands struck the porch boards and became paws larger than my head. The shape of him expanded, remade by force and moonless magic, until the man who had held me through my mother's death was gone. In his place stood a wolf. Massive, silver, beautiful enough to stop my heart, and terrifying enough to start it again. He filled the doorway, blocking the cottage from the night. Rain slicked over his fur, turning it to molten steel beneath the porch light. His ears flattened. His lips drew back from teeth that could tear through bone. But his eyes, God, his eyes found mine for one breath. Hazel and gold. Edgar. My Edgar. The rogue slammed into him. The silver wolf caught it with brutal grace, twisting his body so the impact drove away from the doorway, away from me. They hit the ground hard. The rogue snapped for his face. Edgar drove it down with one paw and released a snarl so deep the windows rattled. More shapes poured from the trees. Nick fought near the gate, black fur streaked with mud. Another dark wolf appeared from the side paddock, one of Edgar's people, though I didn't know who, colliding with two rogues before they reached the porch. But there were too many. They circled. 6, 8, maybe more. My breath came fast and useless. I crawled to the doorway despite every sensible instinct screaming at me not to. My hand closed around the iron poker beside the fireplace. It was ridiculous. It was nothing. It was something to hold. Outside, the silver wolf backed toward the porch, placing himself between me and the ring of enemies tightening around the cottage. He did not run. He did not look away. Neither did I. The wolves circled closer, eyes burning in the dark. One snapped at the air. Another dragged its claws through the mud, leaving deep grooves like warnings. The silver wolf turned his head just enough to look back at me. Not like an animal, like a man, asking me to believe what I'd already seen. My throat tightened around every fear, every question, every broken promise between us. I had thought I knew the impossible. I had thought Sydney had shown me the worst of his secrets. But standing there, with my mother's house behind me and monsters closing in from the trees, I realized I had only seen the edge of him. The wolf lowered his head and growled. The sound moved through my bones. My grip tightened on the poker. I stared at the impossible creature before me, the man I had begun to love, and whispered the only question left. Who are you?
The sky is falling, the ground shakes. We're standing still as the world breaks. I see the fear inside your eyes, but I won't let this be goodbye. If this is the end, just stay with me. One last kiss, that's all we'll need. Hold me until the war ends. Don't let go, don't pretend. If the world burns down tonight, I'll still be yours in the fading light. Hold me. Hold me until the war ends. Me you